Doesn't appear to be working.
Let me get on my phone and look up your channel, and
Oh, maybe it is working.
it says, yeah, it's working. We are live.
Ah, we are live. Excellent. Well, hello everybody. Doesn't appear to be working. I am here with the great Mr. Beat. Mr. Beat,
Hello.
how does it feel being the biggest YouTuber in the world, doing all those challenges that you do, and all of the all that stuff? That is you, is it not?
It is me. Yes,
Yeah.
I'm.
Oh no, that's Mr. Beast. What have I done?
Oh yeah, dang it! I was hoping that wouldn't be able to tell, but yeah, no, I'm not him. Although, fun fact, he was born in the same city, basically where I grew up.
Oh really? Is
Yeah, it's
that
kind of crazy.
Greenville? Is it? Is
Well, that's
that
where
where it is?
he grew up, but he was actually born in Wichita, Kansas, right in the middle.
Oh cool. Oh
So that's
nice.
where I grew up.
You're the most all-American guy that I know. Kansas. That's like, for me, that's like pinnacle of Americana, right in the middle. What's it like? Cornfields?
There are a lot of cornfields. Yeah. We are known for wheat, though, in Kansas. We
Ah,
have wheat, soy, and corn. And yeah, a lot of agriculture, but I mean, most people here live in cities.
yeah.
I would say it's not, I mean, we're part of the Midwest, so
Mm.
there's not a whole lot of differences from folks from Kansas City and folks in Cincinnati.
There's so much land there. So much land.
Yeah.
I'm sure Kansas is probably the same size as the UK or something. There's probably some crazy fact like that. It's a
It
big
not
old
quite, but
place.
it's pretty big. Yeah.
Close.
It takes like 6.5 hours, maybe seven, to drive across the entire state east to west, which a lot of people don't understand. I know for you, you'd be like 6 to 7 hours drive.
That's a
Wow.
long time, yeah.
Yeah,
But for
yeah.
you guys, that's nothing.
Oh yeah, and that's why when I visited the UK, when I took the family there a couple of years ago, we were like, oh yeah, let's just drive up to Scotland. No big deal. We do it one day.
Yeah, that's a big deal for us. You
Yeah.
know, we go drive down to Cornwall, and it's like, 4 or 5 hours. That's a journey. That's an odyssey. But for
Hmm.
you, that's just driving to the next city.
You
Yeah.
bet.
Right. Well, how are you, Mr. Beat? You're not Mr. Beast. You're Mr. Beat. You are one of my favourite YouTubers. I really, really like your channel. Not
Oh,
just your main channel, but I really like the Beat Goes On as well.
oh, thank you. That's
Because
wow.
just,
That's
I think you did who have you done? You've done Pink Floyd, Black Sabbath, just some of my favourite bands, really. And it's lovely hearing the history behind the bands. But that's your side channel. Your main
yeah,
channel, you've done hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of videos. You've done like 800 videos. That's
yeah.
insane.
It is. Yeah, I think, and then you got to remember though, a lot of my earliest videos were strictly curriculum based, so it's stuff that
Mm.
I was already teaching in the classroom, so I just kind of transferred it over to video format, and yeah, my name is actually Matt Beat, so people confuse, is that some kind of pseudonym or nickname? No, my literal
Just
last
just the
name,
name.
my little
Yeah.
surname is Beat. Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah. So, I mean, are you still a teacher?
No, well, I mean, unless you count teaching random people
Obviously, this is
online.
teaching for sure.
Yeah, but not in the classroom. No, I left in 2021, so it's
Yeah.
been over 4 years now, and I've been full time making videos. We'll see how long it lasts. I'm always ready to go back.
I mean, it makes sense that you're not in the classroom anymore because
Yeah.
I don't know how you'd be alive. You wouldn't be able to sleep. You'd just be working 24 hours a day.
I mean, I didn't sleep. If you look at older videos, 2017 to 2020, like half of those videos, my voice sounds really bad because I'm sick or something, and that's because I didn't
Yeah.
sleep back then. Yeah, like pretty much all the 2010s, I didn't sleep much, but now I sleep. I get like 7 hours a night. Don't mean to brag, but
Oof.
yeah.
Nice. Nice. That's a good amount. That's a good amount. Yeah.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, but then, yeah, of course, making these videos takes, well, for me anyway, takes a stupid amount of time.
Well, you do good
Absolutely.
work. Yeah, I want to say like high quality stuff, and I, I think your stuff's underrated. A lot of history stuff, frankly, is now that this AI slop has taken over, I'm just getting so dang frustrated that quality
Yeah.
channels like yours are like getting pushed aside for. I'm constantly getting recommended AI slop history videos, like
Oh God, same.
literally every day. Yeah.
Yeah, same. Oh well, thank you for the kind words. It's yeah, it's good. It's good fun. I mean, it's always just been about the knowledge itself for me. It's about the learning as I go. So even if the channel stopped getting any views whatsoever, I would still do it and I'd still enjoy it. I would just probably have to get a day job as well.
Same.
But
Yeah.
when I began for the first 2 years or so, I was doing it alongside a day job, so I could just go back to doing that. But on the plus side, I do think that with the rise of AI, people are going to want this human connection a bit more, and they're going to want something made by humans a bit more, even more so than now potentially. So we might just become sort of like something for hipsters, but we'll still exist.
I agree. Yeah.
We'll still exist, I think. Yeah. Well, we should probably start getting to talking what we were going to talk about today. What I've promised the people, which is we're going to discuss nothing less than the entire history of the United States, and we might skip over some bits. We might spend too long at other bits, but we'll try and do the whole thing. So let's begin at the very beginning. Humans come across to the Americas. It's at the end of the last ice age, 12,000 odd years ago. Then, as far as I'm aware, the ice bridge closes and no other humans get to the Americas until 1492. So there's a long period of isolation. And then Christopher Columbus basically stumbles upon the place looking for India, looking for the Indies where he can make some money. And he died. I read somewhere, this might be complete nonsense, but he died not actually realizing that he'd found a new continent.
That's right. As
Is that
far as I
right?
could tell,
So
yeah.
that's fun.
Yeah. No, he
He
thought he
thought
was
he was in India.
in Asia. Yeah. Kind of crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, shout out to Leif Erikson as well, right?
Oh God,
Yeah.
how could I forget Leaf? But yeah, he gets to the sort of very northern tip of is it Newfoundland or is it further
Yeah.
north than Newfoundland? So yeah,
Newfoundland. Yeah.
I told a lie. Leif Erikson with his Vikings. I mean, they're not really Vikings; they're sort of traders and farmers, but they arrive briefly, but then they leave. Um, and they don't really make any lasting impact. Am I right?
Not really. We find artifacts a little bit, but it was obviously Christopher Columbus, who
Mm.
today is Columbus Day, also Indigenous Peoples Day. But yeah,
Is
Columbus.
it really? I didn't even realize.
It sure is here in the United States. Yeah.
Oh
So
man,
good. But you know, thousands of places around the world are named after him. He's kind of a big deal. The whole Columbian
he's a big
exchange,
deal.
the
Yeah.
transfer of, I mean, just because after him, what happened after him? There's a before Columbus in history, and there's an after Columbus. So I think it's okay to just like he was a pretty big deal. It's okay. We
Yeah.
can't downplay his significance. And we could still acknowledge that he was a horrible person, sure, but just the impact of that. And I think the first thing I always bring up, though, that is really freaking important is all those Native American tribes. Um, Obviously, the majority of them had no clue that when the first Europeans started to arrive, the majority didn't never encountered one of these Europeans.
Mm.
You had over 500 nations, essentially like over 500 countries just in North America alone, and most of them died before ever encountering a European because of disease, because of malaria, diphtheria, smallpox, you name it. And when Europeans did finally begin to stumble upon signs of humans, it kind of was like the apocalypse, like kind of like I always bring up the example of any of those movies that you where it's like a zombie apocalypse and you have survivors walking around.
Yeah.
Europeans would come across these villages like, oh, people like especially the mound cities of the
Mm.
Mississippi Valley. Yeah, that was
It was people were completely devastated, and in a situation like that, when
sorry,
you
my lighting.
lose, you lose your elders, you lose the knowledge of the community, you lose the knowledge of the civilization. So like history itself was lost in many places, and
Well, we call it prehistory, right? Because there's no written language in the Native
yeah, yeah.
American
But
tribe.
these oral traditions that had been passed down, they were lost in many places, which is a
Those
great
two, yeah,
tragedy, because it was 90%, 95% of people dying. So it's
yeah.
really only like many villages, there's just a few stragglers survive. So really, just complete devastation. Yeah. Yeah. Sorry for skipping over all of that to go straight to Columbus. I tend to focus on the pre-Columbian period. That's like the only American period I focus on because it's the
Right.
most fascinating bit of all. I love it. And as
Well, then
soon as,
tell the audience because you could say it way better than me. Like, why were
well,
all
no,
these
you said it perfectly
no,
well. I mean, I would
why
only
were all these
stress that.
why
I
were
would
all
only
these Native Americans dying and Europeans survived the same diseases? So why was that?
so basically, in the old world, so Asia, well, Afro Eurasia, you have certain diseases that have been knocking around since animals were first domesticated, say 3000 BC or earlier. In some cases, quite a bit earlier. Things like bubonic plague, things like this, they're zoonotic diseases, so they spread from animals to humans. So the humans in those areas where those animals lived, none of those animals live in the new world, so they only live in the old world. And humans have developed immunity to many of those diseases, or at least immunity to some of the effects of those diseases. So by the time those Europeans who already had this immunity to the diseases went to the new world, they brought the diseases with them and encountered people who'd not only never seen any of these domesticated animals before, but they'd never seen any of the diseases before. So it just tore through. The diseases, had a field day because all of these people had no defenses whatsoever. So anyone who survived was incredibly lucky.
Yeah, that's
Bad
way better
times,
than I
bad
would have
times.
described it. Yeah,
It was like mega, mega, mega COVID. COVID times 10. COVID times 100.
probably the worst pandemic in documented history, I would
Yeah,
say.
definitely, definitely. Because it was a collection of pandemics. It wasn't just
Yeah,
one, typhoid, typhus, cholera, diphtheria, whooping cough, just all this smorgasbord of diseases. Absolute death. Just terrible. And as you said as well, many of these people died before they even met a white person.
yeah.
Because the disease, for example, any animals that escaped. So there was a bunch of Spaniards who went down in the 1500s through kind of like Mississippi, Georgia, that area. They landed in Florida, which they named it the Land of Flowers, and they went up through there and they had hundreds of pigs and pack animals with them, and many of these pigs and these horses escaped, and where they went, disease went with them.
Yeah.
So they were just literally these walking disease-filled things that would come, anyone who came across them would die basically. And then, once it's in there, one group passes it to the next group, the next group passes it to the next group, the next group passes, and it just spreads. So actually, by the
Yeah.
time a lot of the first, we would think the Pilgrim Fathers, by the time they arrive, they enter an empty landscape, and it hadn't always been empty. It had been densely populated, say 100 or so years before. But by
Hmm.
the time they got there into sort of New England, that area, there's barely anybody there.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. It's
It's grim.
Europeans really got lucky.
Yeah,
No way
yeah.
to sugarcoat it. And when we talk about the different European groups, obviously I'm speaking English to you right now as an American, and so that means that the group that kind of went out with domination of the culture of this, what would eventually become the United States and also Canada, was Britain. And but at the same time, like we need to, I think it's an important question to ask why that is. And the way I used to teach my students was like, well, the Spanish were here first, okay, and then the Portuguese were here pretty early on. You had a few other explorers. By the way, the name America comes from Amerigo Vespucci, who's the guy who first. He's actually an Italian, similar to Columbus, who started to like try to map some of this new land out when everybody thought it was still Asia. He was like, well, maybe it's not Asia, and that's why they named it America after this Amerigo Vespucci dude. But anyway, so you got different groups. The French, of course, I can't forget the French. Most of them, though, are just here to like make a quick buck. It was the English that was like, you know what? Let's do this crazy thing and maybe try to colonize it. I mean, the Spanish tried to colonize it. They didn't have that much success, mostly because they were trying to settle the tropics where diseases were even worse for everybody, and also
Yeah.
hurricanes and other natural disasters. But yeah, the English had problems too with the first colonies. Roanoke is the most famous example of that, like the lost colony, because
What
no one
happened with
knows
the Lost
actually what
Colony?
happened. Yeah,
We don't know still.
we still don't know exactly what happened, but probably what happened is at some point when everybody was dying, the survivors left to try to just start over, and we don't know. We don't have any trace of where they left to. No artifacts or anything. Maybe one day we'll know, but
I read something recently. I don't know if it was just a sensationalist news article, but they suggested that the Roanoke settlers may have joined a Native American community,
oh
and
yeah,
that's where
yeah.
the
I think I
last
read
ones may
that
have
too.
gone. Because I think they found some European style artifacts a little bit further inland from where Roanoke was at around about the same time. So yeah, just an idea, but it's interesting,
Yeah,
isn't it?
absolutely.
So Rowan, what year was that?
Roanoke, early 1600s. Jamestown was the first successful colony, barely. That was 1607. The
Right.
Pilgrims came in 1620 with the Mayflower and the Puritans who settled up in modern day Massachusetts. So yeah, like 1500s, we have like this whole century of just, oh, let's just check it out, see what's over there. Just mostly explorers, but they had no intention of staying. They're like, okay, let's exploit these new lands and these new people as much as we can, and then bring back the riches to Europe.
So the Spanish had been very good at that. They were out for
Oh yeah.
gold. Well, they were very good at it in Mexico. They weren't actually very good at it in the United States because they didn't find much gold,
Yeah.
and they
One dude
killed a lot
came
of
all the way
people.
to Kansas, actually. Coronado. He made it all the way to Kansas looking for a city of gold that,
Oh
of
wow,
course, no longer, like, it was one of
yeah.
those stories that spread around.
So that
And
would have been in the 1500s then.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Wow, that's amazing. Have any archaeological sites been found related to him?
not a whole lot.
Yeah,
Yeah, not a whole lot.
but that's what some of the earliest antiquarians would have been looking for, I would imagine, in the
Oh, yeah.
1800s.
It was
Out
always
there,
about those precious metals.
yeah, yeah. Find that well, not Aztec. Find the Spanish gold. Yeah, 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 yeah.
And then the Spanish got too much gold. Yeah, then there was
Yeah,
ridiculous, like it just, prices didn't mean anything anymore with,
yeah, yeah, yeah. And they would send these treasure ships back to Europe, and the treasure ships would just attract every other European power. Whenever
mm,
it was heard that a treasure ship was crossing to Europe, everybody would just go and, well, privateers, who are basically just pirates, they would go and take out these treasure ships. Pretty sure that's most of the economy of England for a long time, just stealing this gold from the Spanish, basically. So it's wild. There's this knock on effect of the initial Spanish success. It sort of filters back into Europe, and then the other European powers kind of want in on the Spanish Empire. It's
yeah.
wild.
And yeah, so the three reasons why all the first colonists came over, whether it be from Spain or, uh, I mean, Portugal, that was further south. That was what became Brazil. But but we're talking North America,
Mm.
English, French, Spanish, and to a lesser extent, the Dutch and even the Swedes. Um,
Can't forget the
God,
Swedes.
God, glory, gold, the three G's. So I think gold is the main thing. Like most people that came over here wanted to get rich. But yeah, we of course famously tell the story of the Puritans, the Pilgrims who came from England after not being able to practice their religion freely how they wanted to where they lived. And so they moved around before finally just like saying, screw it, let's just head to across the entire Atlantic Ocean. We may
Mm.
not make it, but yeah, we can. If we do make it, it'll be awesome. They settle
Yeah.
in Massachusetts, and yeah, they start their own theocracy. Basically, it's they're intolerant of other religions
Oh yeah, big
other than
time.
their version of Christianity.
It seems to me there's this interesting experimentation going on because a lot of the different settlements, they all have wild and wacky ideas. Um, the history of Maryland, that was
Yeah,
a Catholic founded place, if I'm not mistaken.
yeah, Lord Baltimore. The idea was it was just a specific playground for this guy,
Mm.
and he's like, well. I think I can make more money if I just allow more people to come here. I don't have any restrictions. And so he's like, yeah, I don't care what your religion is. You can come to Maryland, Maryland as they called it back then.
Mm.
And so you had different, not only different ethnic groups, you had some Germans that came over and Hessians, but you had Catholics, different religions. So
Yeah.
it was a
Yeah.
big deal for people that were not Protestant to be settling with amongst the English, who, of course, by that time, the Church of England was the dominant religion for all of those colonists. And so, yeah, that was the place where all the Catholics ended up was Maryland. Of course, Georgia has a weird story too, and like that was where some of the first settlers were prisoners, kind of similar to parts of Australia.
Oh
It's like,
right.
oh, this is just a place where we can keep the prisoners.
Yeah.
And then you had Rhode Island, which was settled, founded as a place of tolerance, of uh, freedom of religion. That was a brand new idea because people who had fled, folks like Ian Hutchison, who had fled the New England area or the Massachusetts Bay Colony further south, they're still in New England, but they're like, yeah, we want to be able to practice a different version of Christianity. And then, yeah, so Rhode Island, Connecticut as well, they became more tolerant of different types of Christianity.
And so the Rhode Island settlers, what type of Christianity did they follow?
I don't know exactly what kind, but just the fact that they were questioning certain dogma,
Yeah.
doctrine of, and I gotta
So they,
mention the Quakers, man.
yeah, where do the Quakers fit
Pennsylvania.
in? I always think the Quakers are sort of the good guys.
I mean, I'm a little biased on that, but yeah, I love the Quakers.
Yeah.
Like
Why,
just like
why are you biased on the Quakers?
they were, most of them were peace loving.
Yeah,
I guess you
that's
can
what
call
that's
them
what I
hippie
thought you were going to
Baptist.
tell me you're a Quaker.
No, Richard Nixon was a Quaker though, and so was
Oh, really?
Herbert
Was he?
Hoover. Fun facts.
That's interesting. I thought Richard Nixon was heavily involved in warmongering.
No, yeah, yeah. No, that was Kissinger. We'll blame Kissinger for that. But
Okay.
anyway, yeah. So the fascinating thing about Pennsylvania was like William Penn and it was dad, but then him, and then like his inner circle. They all pretty much was like, hey, uh, we're gonna we're gonna form this unique colony that's more modernized and like really think it carefully through as far as how we design our cities and how we divide up land. But also, they were extremely tolerant of other religions and other ethnic groups. And so, because of that, places like Philadelphia quickly became very prosperous. I always say if you want to be prosperous as a society, you have to just welcome everybody in, like
Mm.
not discriminate with the type of people you're going to let in. Same thing with New York, even though the New York City, of course, was once New Amsterdam, as they might be giants once sang. Uh, yeah, the Dutch, of course, got kicked out pretty quickly by the British. But then after that, just like similar to the Dutch, they were. It was really easy to relocate there. You had a lot of indentured servants that ended up there. So indentured servants were um, they were basically slaves, but they could work their way towards freedom. Unlike what happened further south, of course, since beginning in the 1600s, you had the Atlantic slave trade. So you had so many slaves that were kidnapped from the west coast of Africa and forced to, like, they were crammed onto ships, and then many of them ended up in the Caribbean Sea on different islands working in plantations, mostly sugar plantations, but some of them did end up in the southern colonies. So the Carolinas, Georgia, all the way up, though, like, people don't realize that slavery was legal, and I think just about all of the colonies at one point.
That's
It
what
was
I was about
only,
to ask. So
yeah,
every colony.
every colony had legal slavery, and the United States, what would become the United States, is where it became normalized culturally, like where they, like, oh yeah, it's just the way it is, and they would begin to use the Bible, their religious
Yeah.
beliefs, to justify it even, which is, it's kind of crazy for us to look back on that today, like, but no, I mean, if you're already benefiting from something, then you got to be like, okay, well, how can we justify
You've got
this?
to justify it somehow. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's grim. What's the slavery of our time is what I think about.
Oh,
Sweatshops, maybe.
yeah. You could make, if you want to get really philosophical, you could argue that all of us are slaves to a certain extent.
Yeah. Oh, I fully think we are. I think we've
Yeah.
already been taken over by algorithms which govern our lives, to be honest. But
Right.
yeah.
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
jumping
let's go back
around.
to the
I'm sorry, I'm jumping
1600s.
around. If you keep us on track, Pete, okay?
No, that's great. No, that's great. So okay, we're in the early colonies now. So Jamestown was founded, then Jamestown was abandoned, or did it carry on?
It carried on barely. They almost all died multiple
Almost all
times.
died
The
multiple
thing that was
times.
their saving grace was tobacco. The fact that
Mm,
they could grow tobacco very easily in Virginia, and
mm.
that really benefited the English a lot.
Yeah,
A
yeah.
lot of, because, yeah, drugs, you can't go wrong with drugs, and I
Well, yeah,
include
yeah,
sugar with that.
absolutely.
With further south, sugar cane, I think that's a drug too. Yeah, that
I
did
think
pretty
I think
well.
sugarcane is one of the most lucrative of all the drugs, actually, as well.
Oh,
It's a drug you can give to children.
and coffee, that's one
Mm,
thing. Of course, today coffee is like, I mean, that's what I'm drinking right now, cold brew.
mm. Oh,
I
nice.
But coffee didn't exist, and half of the world didn't know what coffee was until after Columbus. So um, that was another big development.
And chocolate as well.
Chocolate, yes.
Oh,
These are all
and
drugs as far as I'm concerned.
yeah. And then, I mean, the other thing, yeah, we should probably just briefly talk about the sort of the Columbian exchange. So these resources, which suddenly appear in Europe. So the potato suddenly appears, and we think of try and imagine Ireland without potatoes. It's crazy, but yeah, all of medieval Ireland, no potatoes. They suddenly appear in the 1500s. And again, the knock on of not to we're supposed to be staying in the Americas, but I'll just briefly talk about Europe. The knock on effects of all of these resources going through are huge. So, for example, it leads to the potato famine in the 1800s in Ireland because potatoes were such a good crop to grow. They would grow everywhere.
Hmm.
So in previously, infertile, barren land, they could just fill them with potatoes. But because they focused too much on the one crop, terrible events ensued and the mass starvation. And there were lots of these things where one resource would cross over after, being isolated for 15,000 years or whatever.
Yeah, you mentioned corn earlier being common around
Corn,
Kansas.
big
Yeah,
one.
there was no corn in North America before the Europeans brought it over. So yeah,
And there's lots of like wheat and things like this brought over. Yeah.
horses.
Oh, horses being a big one. Absolutely huge one.
Yeah.
Yeah. All of the sort of the Plains Indians, they didn't have horses before they sort of just in many cases the horses liberated themselves from the Spanish and
Yeah.
horses would just appear So they must have thought they were, given by the gods, and
Yeah.
just a fully, you know, um, I can't think of the right word, a trained horse. Basically, it's not a wild horse. Just appears. You can ride it pretty easily. So yeah, life on the plains was revolutionized by just these sort of wild things just appearing.
We tend to think that the Columbian Exchange was a net negative for the Native Americans.
And it
I mean,
mostly was.
yeah, it's more
Mostly was.
complicated than that. But yeah, like
Yeah.
if you, I
But
mean,
for the
because obviously it's
survivors,
diseases. Yeah, for the
yeah, for the
survivors, it was.
survivors, they,
min-
that
Yeah.
10%, um, they did
Now,
okay out of it for
at
in the
least
short
for a
term.
while. Yeah.
Mm,
Right.
in the
Right. A
short
couple
term,
hundred
because
years,
they were
and then
still living far outside these initial colonies. So, all right, we're in the early 1600s. There are 13 colonies by that point,
well,
or
that
not
wouldn't be
quite.
until till the end of the 1600s. Yeah. So
Got ya. So it's really a tiny space, isn't it? It's just New England, and then along that coast, the rest of it is still. I mean, it's still unknown, essentially unmapped. Would that be fair to say?
yeah, it was dangerous to go too far inland because of
Hmm.
not just Native American threats, but just trade. I mean, transportation. It was very slow to get around back then, and uh, by the end of the 1600s, yeah, there's 13 colonies, and there's now some kind of network of roads. So it's not just ships that's like transporting everyone. And but even then, like I was recently in the Shenandoah Valley of Virginia, which is it's about 150 miles inland of from the Atlantic Ocean. But early 1700s, they were like, "This is the West," you know. For
Yeah,
the English called
yeah.
it the West, and that was
Hmm.
even before that was further east than the Appalachian Mountains. So by the mid 1700s, the Appalachian Mountains were that was considered to be the western border of the colonies, almost all of them. It made sense because, yeah, they were really difficult to travel through. Only crazy people would try to go through. And then on the other side, you had hostile groups, not only
Yeah.
Native American tribes, but you had the French who were out there, mainly further north. I don't know how much you want to focus on French colonization, but they were
No,
mostly Quebec.
yeah. No,
Yeah.
I like the French.
Ah,
There's a sort of like semi-pretend rivalry between the British and the French, but
yeah.
yeah, we mostly do it just to keep up appearances. It's mostly not real. I think the French colonization of the US is really interesting because they were just sort of in the middle of nowhere in forts, is what it seems to me,
Mostly men,
doing
unlike
some quite nasty things a lot of the time.
yeah, but they had better relations with the Native American tribes because there was a more reciprocal relationship
Oh,
because
interesting.
yeah, with the trade, especially with furs, the fur trade,
Mm,
and many French men did hook up with Native American women,
mm,
um, and it wasn't like honestly the French were more concerned with the English than any other threat. And then, of course, this culminates with the 7 Years' War.
yes. So we may have skipped forward a little bit. The Seven
Oh, I'm
Years'
sorry.
War is no,
Yeah,
that's fine. It's 17 something,
the 1750s.
1750s, and this is Last of the Mohicans.
Yes, it is a great movie.
Great movie. That might be my favorite historical movie of all
Oh
time.
yeah, it's a good one. Well, Daniel
It's
Day Lewis, man,
oh, so good. The
love
epic
that dude.
music as well, running through those. I mean, where's it? It's New England. Is it New York, upstate New York? Is that where it's set?
Yeah,
Yeah.
like the
So,
Iroquois Nation is,
mm.
yeah, present day New York State.
So by the time of the 7 Years' War, this is the 1750s. We do have 13 colonies at that point,
Yes.
so they're all there, um, and they're all self-governing.
Yeah, they're like 13 little countries.
Yeah, so the 13 little countries they pay taxes to the king in England, begrudgingly.
Yeah.
Um, but aside from that, they run their own affairs.
Yeah. I mean, when we think about the purpose of government, mostly it's the government is there to protect all of us, society. And so, in many ways, by the mid 1700s, these colonists were protecting themselves. Like, sure,
Mm.
you had a heavy British presence, but they're pretty far away. So even if if you need reinforcements, for example, when there's a threat, it's going to take a while for those reinforcements to arrive. So you're protecting yourself. You're doing your own thing. And the other really important part of this is if you have 150 years of, I mean, we're talking many generations from the time of Jamestown, 1607, to 1756, the first year of the Seven Years' War. In that span, a lot changes culturally, where you do have a very distinct American culture
Mm.
compared to their ancestors. I mean, especially with the influences of other countries and other just the isolation from Europe.
We've got people by that point who it's been 4 or 5 generations since they arrived.
Yep.
You know, long, long time, long, long time. Um, do we still have newcomers coming in, joining these colonies?
Yeah, a lot more. By this time, actually, word had got out around the world even that, hey, this is where you make your money. This is
Mm.
truly like, if you want to get out of the shackles of this old feudal system that kind of is still overhanging everyone, even though capitalism by this time existed as a thing, it wasn't really articulated yet until Adam Smith a couple decades later. But yeah, by the mid 1700s, most people knew that, hey, if you could find a way to the Americas, you had a chance to lift yourself up out of poverty.
And did any one of the colonies get preference over the others, or were they all seen as great places to go?
This depends on the historian. I would say, in my opinion, I would say Pennsylvania was highly sought after. Maryland,
Mm.
good port in Maryland, of course, with Baltimore. New York City, as I mentioned earlier. Um, I think in terms of like, the really racist folks who didn't who had didn't even question slavery as an institution at all. Like they were like, oh yeah, I want to get me some land in South Carolina and start a plantation, get me some slaves.
Yeah,
So yeah,
yeah.
like whereas that
I,
wasn't.
I always, I always assumed that if you were from the gentry in Europe, you might go to the south, whereas if
Yeah,
you're just, Joe Blogs on the street, you might go to the north. But maybe that's a common misconception, but I don't know.
I think there's some truth to that. Yeah,
Mm.
you also had a heavy Scottish presence in the southern colonies. I don't know why that is actually. I
I
need to
was going to
research
say,
that more.
just
But like
Scottish
many of
people
them,
are
I
mean.
think many of them actually were more towards Virginia and North Carolina. But yeah,
Yeah,
South
yeah.
Carolina kind of stereotypically is like, oh yeah, if you already came from wealth and you wanted to go to the colonies, that's where you went.
And make some more wealth. Yeah,
Yeah,
interesting. So
exploiting free labor.
I mean, should I be thinking of all of the southern states as being basically just that, or I mean, is it like half and half, non-slave owners and then half slave owners, or is it really mostly plantations?
Well, that's what dominated in the southern colonies.
Mm.
The middle colonies, as we call them, so Maryland, Delaware, even New York and Pennsylvania. I would say that was, if you want a good feel for how all the colonies were, that's where you really do go, because it's a mix of everything. You have
Mm.
legal slavery, even in Pennsylvania for a while.
Oh wow.
And
Okay.
yeah, at the same time, you
So
have,
it really was that free. It was free to do whatever you want, really.
right.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, you have people from all over the world coming. Now, obviously, fewer people from further away, but yeah, if you could get there. And that's the thing too, for like the earliest years of the throughout colonial history into the 1800s even, it was like if you could find a way here, then you're pretty much, there's no like process to become a citizen or anything. You show up, you're you start making money. That's
Yeah.
it.
Mm.
Yeah.
So let's stick in the early 1700s just for a minute, because I really want to get to grips with what these 13 colonies look like. And are there rivalries between them?
I would say somewhat, but not as much as
Not as much. So
yeah.
they
Like
are
I think the biggest thing is there was a rivalry between Southern colonies and New England colonies, and you
right.
see this with the tensions that during the American Revolution. You
Mm.
have it's really difficult for them to compromise and come together, despite having a very common enemy, the king. So yeah, like I think it's if you just look at some of the arguments that were had by Southern founding fathers versus Northern founding fathers, yeah, you'll see that.
Interesting. So you just mentioned founding fathers. I realise I've skipped over something I wanted to ask you about. The Pilgrim Fathers, right?
Mm.
This is. I'm thinking, is it like Nantucket sort of area? Is that completely wrong? Is it like Rhode Island, that sort of area? Where do these
Yeah.
Pilgrim Fathers land?
So, oh yeah, like just the fact that most Americans today can trace their ancestry directly back to those Puritans. Is that what you're asking, or like
Well, just
you talking
for
about the
some
culture?
reason, I don't know what it is, but when I think of the origin of the United States, it's like the Pilgrim Fathers. That's sort of like a thing. That's like a historical one of
Hmm.
those talking points almost. I mean, were they really that important? It sounds like they were.
I mean,
If everyone can
later
trace their
on,
ancestry back,
this is part of the mythology that develops in any
so it's part of
country's
the
history.
mythology.
Yeah,
Okay,
like the John Winthrop "City on a Hill," I will build a city upon a hill. Like that, a
yeah.
lot of that came later. Uh, and same thing with like Paul Revere. Like Paul Revere was not that famous during the Revolution, but then later on, because of a poem, because of a painting, then he all of a sudden he was like the most one of the most famous
Oh
American
man,
revolutionaries. So
you
it's one of the
you're gonna hate
yeah.
me. I don't know who he is.
Oh yeah, well,
I'm sorry.
I made a video about him if you're bored on a
Oh, I'll
Saturday
have to
night.
watch it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
but he
but
there's
he's
like
a founding father,
technically, yeah, he's a
technically.
revolutionary. Yeah, he's one of
Yeah,
those wealthy guys that didn't like to be taxed, and he lived in Boston. And
yeah.
somebody in the comments mentioned the cotton gin. That's a really we're not quite there yet. That came 1790s.
We'll get there. We'll get
Yeah.
there. We'll get there. Um, just real quickly then. So the Pilgrim Fathers, they are Puritans,
Yeah, yeah. Most of
and
that's what
it
they all. Yeah.
is that the first boat of Puritans.
Oh, so you're talking about the Mayflower and
Yeah, that's
uh,
the Mayflower. That's it. That's what I'm trying to get at.
yeah. I mean,
So
they
they
were.
so they rock up, and that is Pocahontas times.
Oh, okay, yeah. We skipped right over Pocahontas.
We've
Yeah,
got to mention Pocahontas just before we get to Last of the Mohicans.
yeah.
Keep it
This
in
is awesome.
films, you know.
I love this. So yeah, Pocahontas was a member of the Powhatan Nation, but they were down in Virginia. So
Oh man, I'm getting my geography terribly. So
yeah,
that's Virginia. Okay,
there's a
right.
couple Johns to know about. You probably know about John Smith,
I
John
do.
Winthrop, maybe also,
I know John Smith because he's the man in
or
the
not John
film.
Winthrop, John Rolfe.
John
My
Rolfe, yes, I
mixing up
know
all
about
my
this. Yeah,
Johns.
I know about
Yeah, so
this.
John Rolfe is the one who actually marries Pocahontas. He was an explorer who made a lot of money off tobacco. He was one of the first to successfully cultivate it there. And yeah, he brought Pocahontas back to England, and she was pretty cozy with the English. Actually, she
Mm,
I don't know, like there's that crappy Disney movie about her that's not historically accurate at all. So don't.
yeah,
I mean, if you're trying to learn history, don't watch that movie. But yeah, like
but she
in
was a
fact,
real person.
she was a real person. Yeah, and there was a kind of a symbol, more like kind of like George Washington, I guess. The more you think about it, is like a symbol, like a symbol of somebody who said like reached out to the English and say, "Hey, yeah, we can coexist." And then the English are like, "Yeah, yeah, let's coexist. We can make this work together." And
Mm,
same thing with the story of the Pilgrims with uh, the Native Americans in Massachusetts. Plymouth Colony is what it was called when they first settled. So in Plymouth, you had Native Americans there too who were friendly, and who worked with them, and they actually for decades got along pretty well. And this is where that whole mythology comes from: the first Thanksgiving.
Ah,
The
yes.
idea that, oh, we're going to share a meal once a year after the harvest, which we're actually approaching Thanksgiving. Canadian Thanksgiving is today, by by the way. Also Columbus Day, Canadian Thanksgiving, but American Thanksgiving is next month. That whole tradition of the sharing of the meal, like these two different groups of people, and how much truth is in it. Well, it's complicated. The channel Knowing Better has a really good video about it if you want to like dive in. But overall, like these nice relations didn't last that long,
No.
unfortunately. And King Philip's
Yes.
War was one of the most brutal, horrifying wars ever in American history. Most Americans don't know about it. That was the first time where things really escalated between the Puritans and the local Native American tribe.
Yes. I
And
know. I know this from Atunshai
I was
films.
gonna,
He's
yeah,
done
shout out to that video.
he's
Great
done
video
some
on,
great things on King Philip's War. Because I think
yeah,
he's from Massachusetts, so he's into
yeah,
these interesting sort of 1600s things. Because that's the 1600s, right?
yeah. That's still
Yeah.
1600s.
Mm.
Yep.
And I'm guessing King Philip's War is just one of many conflicts that are fought throughout the sort of the 13 colonies at this
Yeah,
time.
it's the
So there's
most
these
dramatic,
small, yeah,
but yeah, certainly lots of. And then there were already as early as the 1600s, you had uprisings. Sometimes you like some of the English colonists tried to enslave Native Americans, but it
mm,
didn't work out as well because Native Americans were uh, harder to like. They knew the area better, and so they
mm,
escaped more. Plus, some of them were more
yeah,
susceptible to diseases.
yeah.
And so that's why they focused more on African slave labor. But there were times, famously, you got to give a shout out to Bacon's Rebellion as well. Are you familiar with Bacon's Rebellion? It,
Ooh, is this Francis Bacon?
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Wait,
yeah.
no, is
No,
Francis Bacon? No, he's isn't he like a mathematician? No, this is. Let me look it up here.
let's have a
What's
little
his
look.
first
See,
name?
yeah,
Nathaniel Bacon. Nathaniel Bacon. Different
Nathaniel
Bacon.
Bacon. Oh,
Okay, so this was
it's making
this
me
was
hungry.
Virginia. You had Native Americans teaming up with African Americans
Mm,
and also indentured servants. Basically, all of the folks that were not part of the upper class of society led this remarkable uprising in the 1676. I have it pulled up in front of me because I don't memorize these years very well, but 1676 to 1677. And after this is when they really kind of hunkered down and said, okay, we need to divide up all these groups to make sure they don't unite and try to overthrow the ruling class again. But it's a
yeah.
really inspiring, especially in these times that we live in right now. If you want to get all fired up, just look up Bacon's Rebellion.
So he was rebelling again. Yeah. So I mean, obviously, this is the
Oh,
crown at this point. So
yeah.
he's
And who
because
was
this is.
Nathaniel Bacon? He was just some rich dude who, okay, I compare it to Trump. Because you have, the old George Carlin saying it's a big club, but we ain't in it. Like
Mm,
there's a club of powerful people around the world. You know, doesn't mean everybody in that club gets along, and so that's why we see wars happen and stuff. Well,
mm,
Donald Trump was in that club, but everybody else in that club's making fun of him, and he doesn't feel like he really belongs. So he's like, fine, I'm gonna get the masses, and I'm gonna like break away from this club and start my own club. And then I'm going to call you all elites, even though I'm really one of the elites myself.
mm,
Same thing. Nathaniel Bacon's
mm.
one of the elites, but he's getting screwed over by other elites. And so he wants to stick it to him. And so he organizes like this populist movement.
I was going to say. So he's a
Acts like
populist
a,
then. Yeah.
but it's an uprising. Yeah.
Mm.
It's a cool story.
Interesting. Yeah. No, that's really interesting. And he succeed. Well, he doesn't succeed. Obviously. I mean, how does he end? Is it
It doesn't end very well.
executed?
Yeah. They're like, they didn't have much of a chance to be, but it was,
Mm,
the fact that it lasted as long as it did just kind of shows you too, like the whole divide and conquer thing does work. If you have,
mm,
um, the non-elites all teaming up then the powers that be are going to be under threat. So that's why they keep us divided and hating
Oh,
each other. Now I sound
definitely.
conspiratorial, but I
No,
mean,
I agree with you. I mean, there's God. I mean, all of this technology keeps us divided. It's all of this division is very good for the Illuminati.
those who own the technology, yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. The tech barons. Um. So that rebellion fails. That sounds like a Revolutionary War before the Revolutionary War to a certain extent. A small little precursor in a way.
In a way, yeah.
But by and large, people pay their taxes. The colonies, are they expanding the colonies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
So they sort of gobbling up land throughout the 1600s. And then how? Yeah. So we get to the early 1700s, and the British have this big swathe of land, all their colonies. The French, meanwhile, I mean, do they have the rest of the continent essentially?
Yeah, big, most of it.
Hmm.
In the South, the Spanish have claims, and
Yeah.
of course, like this whole time, Native Americans are just like, "What? You've
Yeah.
claimed over our land?" Yeah,
And so the French, are they going down through what is now Canada?
all the way down the Mississippi River to the
Hmm.
Gulf of Mexico. So they actually have a settlement that's what becomes New Orleans, and then that whole territory, Louisiana, which is this giant territory in the middle of the continent. That's
It's not just the state that we know now; it's the
yeah,
whole of Kansas and all everything.
basically the watershed of the Mississippi River. So all the significant waterways that eventually lead into the Mississippi River is
Mm.
what the French claimed as Louisiana.
But they aren't living in colonies like the British are. It's more just men living in these sort of frontier garrisons. Would that be fair to say? Yeah.
Yeah,
So
for
it's
the
kind of
most
a bit
part.
different. It's a bit more brutal. It's a bit more rugged. It's more frontiery.
Yeah.
Um, where are the? I mean, in parallel to the 13 colonies, the French, up in Quebec and places like that, do they exist at this point?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
around the same time the colonies, the English colonies are growing as Quebec is steadily growing, but not, obviously not the numbers that can
Not quite the
match.
numbers, but that would be what the main French power base in the Americas.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to Last of the Mohicans.
7 Years War.
How does it begin? How does it begin?
George freaking Washington.
George Washington. Wow.
Yeah, he kind of like gets in a little skirmish with the French, and
Yeah.
it just kind of gets out of control. Like it wasn't supposed to be a big deal, and so yeah, he accidentally leads some men into an ambush of French soldiers. It's kind of crazy, but yeah, it turns. I mean, this is just part of a larger, almost World War, 7 Years War, which much of it was
Mm.
fought in Europe.
Yeah.
In the North American theater, we call it the French and Indian War, and it lasted, yeah, 7 years, 1756 to 1763. Ends with the Treaty of Paris, not to be confused with that Treaty of Paris or that Treaty of Paris, but no, the Treaty of Paris of 1763.
Mm.
That's the one that said, "Hey, sorry, French, you're under British control in North America." They had to give up all their land, and then it also it was an expensive war for the British. They won the war, but
Yeah.
it was at a huge cost. In addition to lives lost, they had a huge debt that they had to pay off, and so they decided, the British Parliament decided, we probably should raise this revenue by putting in like raising taxes or creating new taxes for the colonists, because they've kind of been bums. They kind of been free riding a bit. They get a lot. They make a lot of money, and we need,
Yeah.
we protect them.
That doesn't sound very American of you.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
No, that's it. Yeah, it's interesting. So this massive war has broken out. It's also called the Indian Wars. Indian
French and
War, is that
Indian
right?
War.
French and Indian War, yeah. And
Yeah.
is that because, I mean, So it's British and Native Americans versus French and Native
Oh
Americans.
yeah.
Yeah.
Most of the native, as I was kind of show or like hinting at earlier, like the relations between the French and many Native American tribes was much better than that between English colonists and Native Americans. And so most Native American tribes sided with the French, and that's why we call it that, because
Wow.
they're allies, because they were like, oh yeah, this is a chance to take out the English as well.
Okay. And then by the time the English win, that's obviously terrible for the native people who
Yep.
sided with the French. And I'm guessing that leads to vast lands being claimed.
So after that war is over, any Native American tribe that is east of the Appalachian Mountains has to get out of here, go west. They kick them
Right.
further west. Although there are exceptions for a while, but then later on, their treaties are broken as well. There's this trend in
Mm.
American history where the English and then later Americans will sign treaties with Native American tribes, saying these tribes they're guaranteed their land and the English and later Americans won't do anything to take that land, and promises. But then the treaties are broken, promises broken,
Yeah.
and they're pushed further and further west into smaller and smaller reservations. And that begins, yeah, with the French and Indian War. Yeah, the Proclamation of 1763 that immediately happens at the end of the war that says any English colonists can't settle west of the Appalachian Mountains. It was an effort to like say, hey, we need to like make sure there's peace between these colonists who are pushing further and further west and Native American tribes out there. So,
Mm.
people, leaders in the colonies knew that this was a big issue, that there had to be some kind of point where there could be compromise with Native American tribes because obviously their land was being stolen from them.
Yeah. Yeah. It's yeah, I've been to a few museums in the US where it's yeah, they heavily talk about the treaties being broken over and over and over again. And when you really see a map of all these treaties that are broken, it is wild because it is just hundreds of these things all over the place, over and over and over again. Um, yeah, it's not very respectful, is it? It's sort of like not very dignified to just lie over and over and over again. Oh, it's a bit yeah, it's a bit depressing. Um, so the end of the French Indian Wars, the French, what they kicked further west, I imagine, further
Many
north
many
and
do stay in
west.
Quebec, but
Many stay, yeah,
some go back to France. There's some in Maine, which didn't exist back then, but present day Maine, and some of them stay, but others go to down to New Orleans and Louisiana. New Orleans is actually,
yeah.
if you go to New Orleans to this day, like such a unique place because you have such a blend of different cultures there and ethnic groups that has
I
historically.
was lucky enough to visit last year when I went to the
Oh,
US, and
that's
it
awesome.
was yeah, it was one of our favourite cities. Actually, we loved it,
Oh, it's such
absolutely
a
loved it.
unique place. That's where
And
Atunshai lives now. Yeah, speaking of.
oh, really? Oh, amazing. Oh,
You
there's
should have reached
a
out to
lot
him,
of
yeah.
I didn't know he was there. That's yeah. There's a lot of cool history in New Orleans. A lot of like creepy sort of ghost history as well, which is cool. The music, oh, incredible, absolutely incredible. You just
Mhm.
said that Maine didn't exist.
It was used to be part of Massachusetts.
Oh man, I had no idea. Why didn't they
Yeah.
tell me? No. Yeah. So Maine. So when did Maine come into existence?
Well, jump ahead to 1820,
Oh
the
man,
Missouri
that's
Compromise,
crazy.
because there
So
was
Massachusetts was really massive.
yeah, they split it up because they wanted to have an even number of slave states and free states, and so they
Hmm.
created this whole new state because it was isolated, cut off from the rest of Massachusetts anyway. So they're like, yeah, this makes sense that it's a separate state. Yeah.
Interesting. Huh, wild. All right. Cool. So let's. All right. We're almost there. We're almost at the War of Independence. We're almost there. George Washington has already appeared. He must have been quite a young man in the war, the 7 Years' War.
I believe he was in his 30s. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I mean that is kind of is he a celebrity by the time of the actual outbreak of war with the British?
Uh, the Revolutionary War.
Mm. Is
Yeah,
George Washington known?
yeah,
Everybody
he's
knows him.
known,
Yeah,
but like he's not legendary yet. He's just known.
he's just a
Um,
no. Yeah.
because yeah, he did make a name for himself during the French and Indian War, but also he was one of the first people to who was in the military, a military man who was publicly outspoken against the British in those years preceding the Revolution.
So by the 1770s, these taxes have been in effect, what, for 10 years?
Some, yeah,
A
they come
number
and
of
go.
years.
You know, there was the you had the Stamp Act, you had the Tea Act. These are different types of taxes that are passed on the colonists specifically. So a tax on tea, a tax on a stamp, would just means like anytime you have you're selling something that's paper based, it has to get a stamp, and then there's a charge for that, and that's a tax that goes to the British government. So you have the tax, and then you have people complaining about it, and then people get really angry about it, and British Parliament's like, okay, we'll get rid of the tax. They have the intolerable acts, which kind of take it up a notch in response to the Boston Tea Party, because that Boston Tea Party was a famous event that happened in reaction to the Tea Act, the tea tax, because obviously a lot of people love tea in England and the colonies. Yeah, like, and they don't want to pay
Still,
more.
we still do today. I've got my tea here.
There you go. You got your tea, I got my coffee. Yeah. But yeah, like so and it's really important to point out that this is led by rich guys. The poor people don't have time for these protests. They're too busy working or just barely surviving. But the rich guys who have a lot of money they're getting taxed a lot more. They're more heavily affected by this. They're not seeing so much the benefit to them. And so they lead these protests, and you have like the groups like the Sons of Liberty in Boston, led by folks like Sam Adams, who was kind of crazy. He was pretty radical. I compare him to John Brown, a figure in American history that was like, yeah, sometimes violence is justified. Sometimes you need to get out your gun and shoot somebody.
And they
He
named the beer
justified.
after him.
Yeah, now a beer is named after him. That's right. One of the most famous breweries in the United States. But yeah, like the tarring and feathering became a thing, which is like it's nuts. Like to think that they did this to British soldiers. I don't know. I don't know the exact number of how many times this actually happened. Obviously, it gets sensationalized, but the fact that it happened
Yeah.
at all, just hot tar placed on somebody, burning their
It's
skin, giving them permanent skin damage if they survive. Some
so.
of them
Oh, okay.
smothered.
So it would be
Yeah.
permanent damage then. Yeah.
Oh yeah, and this is so. I mean, when we always like to here in the United States kind of paint it as, oh, these were heroes, these protesters. It was first of all, it was a small group of people. They were rich guys, and it was and yeah, like they did sometimes bad things. We highlight the Boston Massacre, which was British soldiers firing upon civilians who were protesters. That was horrible. So it did go both ways, but it was definitely complicated.
Yeah.
Sorry, my dog's
Absolutely. Yeah.
barking out there.
Yeah.
If you hear that,
It's
Patsy, stop. Her name's Patsy.
nice. In the movies, it's always the redcoats were always the baddies, and I'm
Yeah,
sure a lot of
right.
them were baddies. But at the same time, a lot of them would they have been Americans? So like some of the British soldiers, were they
Yeah.
from the colonies? Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So some of them
absolutely.
were just Americans really who'd lived
Just
in,
loyalists.
yeah, yeah,
There's that
yeah.
old. It's kind of cliche, but there's a kind of an oversimplified way of like the three categories in colonial America in the 1770s. Like you had the loyalists, who were the third that were loyal to the British crown. You had the revolutionaries, are also known as the patriots, who were like they wanted like, no, we need to break away, break it, independence even, dare I say. And then you had the other third who couldn't care less. They just were trying to live their lives. They didn't want to take a side.
Yeah. How big of a proportion were those people?
I mean, I think it was more realistically like half the population. Yeah, I mean, that's
Yeah.
kind of how it is most times in history. Like
I
you
think
hear
you're
from the
right.
loudest
Yeah.
voices. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, yeah, yeah. But then sometimes in history, that big group gets squeezed, depending how bad things get, really. But yeah, so I mean, you're saying that things weren't necessarily, conditions weren't terrible. Life was generally okay for most people, but it was generally the rich people were getting taxed a lot, and then they sort of got everybody on side to overthrow the British because they wanted to make a bit more money
Well, yeah, somebody mentioned in
to a
the
certain
comments
extent.
that the quartering of British soldiers. There were other things like just this. It became philosophical. The fact that you had a country that was thousands of miles away across the ocean that were just bossing you around, and especially considering during the French and Indian War, how much the colonists did to win that war. They helped them win that war, and this is the respect we get.
Yeah.
More laws against or more restrictions, more taxes.
It's interesting you just mentioned the philosophical angle as well. And lots of the founding fathers kind of were philosophers. So, like Ben Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, people like this, John Adams. Were they looking at this? There's sort of parallels to, how can I say this, kind of classical Greece. Did they sort of see themselves as creating a new republic inspired by the principles of sort of the classical republican age of the ancient world, let's say?
I would say so, yeah, in
Yeah,
part.
because that's an interesting thing as well.
I mean,
So
it's
they,
during the Enlightenment. This is like the Enlightenment had been going on since the late 1600s, and so they're all up in it. I mean, and they're all educated folks. They've read a lot of books, and they've read John Locke. They've read Rousseau. They've read Voltaire. Although he's more contemporary, but yeah, like they're all. I mean, for those of you who don't know what the Enlightenment is, I think we need to like break down what that is because in some ways it's under threat today. The Enlightenment was just basically this shift in how people thought about society, instead of like hierarchies, having more emphasis on individualism. So individual rights, civil rights and liberties. Also, the other big part of it is using reason and scientific evidence and scientific exploration to find out the truth instead of religion or superstition. So these developments all kind of came together in this giant movement that took over Europe, and many of those men that thought that this was a philosophical moment to say, hey, if we should break up, we should literally break away from Britain, start our own country, and then form a government based on Enlightenment ideals. It was pretty radical, actually. And
it's
even like
super radical.
some of them were
Yeah,
even talking about this thing called democracy. They're
yeah,
like, hey,
yeah,
we
yeah,
should like
yeah.
we should like totally let people have a voice in the society. It was radical. Yeah, it was kind of
Yeah.
crazy.
It's a big experiment.
Yeah, yeah.
This is, I suppose it had happened briefly in the UK because we had a civil war in the 1600s, which briefly overthrew the monarchy, but then the monarchy was re-established.
Yeah.
So in America at this time, the idea of breaking away from the monarchy is pretty new. It's quite a new thing. It's
But
pre-French
heavily
Revolution,
inspired by the English Civil War. Yeah, so I'm glad you brought
heavily
that up.
inspired by the English Civil War. Yeah,
Yeah.
I suppose in some ways, did they think the restoration of the monarchy was a bad thing in the UK, and they they're trying to continue the ideals of the Roundheads in that war, I suppose.
In some ways, yeah, I would say so.
Interesting. What else was I going to say? Oh yeah, you can see the classical influence in all of the sort of buildings as well, which I always find interesting.
Oh, yeah.
Sort of, it looks Roman and Greek because
Yeah.
they're harking back to that time.
All of DC, the capital. If you look at the homes of founding fathers like George Washington and Thomas Jefferson, James Madison, definitely influenced by that.
And do they? I mean, they see themselves as like Greek philosophers, or is that too far?
I just think that they held them in high regard, is all.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Cool. So, all right. How does the war start?
Well, it's always weird because at the time in 1775, I don't think a lot of people realized it was a full-fledged war, but Lexington and Concord, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, which really was just a situation where colonists were stockpiling weapons to defend themselves. They said to defend themselves against British soldiers. And British soldiers were threatened by that. They were like, well, "What are you guys up to?" And
Yeah.
tensions were already high anyway because of all the protests and the Boston Massacre had happened a year or two before, and the moment British soldiers came, like decided that we're going to seize weapons. This is why the Second Amendment is such a big deal here in the United States, like the right to bear arms, the right to bear a firearm to defend yourself. So these muskets that were colonists were hoarding, the British soldiers were threatening to take them, and then once they tried, a skirmish broke out, and then another one, and we now call that the Battle of Lexington and Concord. I'm oversimplifying, of course, but that was the first official battle of the what became known as the American War of Independence, and then the larger American Revolution. So you have the fighting going on, which eventually the colonists all start to team up and they're like, let's start an army, the Continental Army, because it's the
Mm.
entire continent, and let's pick somebody to lead it. Well, this guy did pretty well during the French and Indian War. I think he'll be all right. George Washington leads the whole thing. So you have that side of it, but it's not going very well. I mean, the British military is the best in the world at the time. They are the dominant force. I mean, they could easily defeat the Americans, the Patriots, if they wanted to, but they don't fully go in anyway. They're just kind of, half doing it, I would say. But yeah,
Is that because they engaged elsewhere in the world?
yeah, they had their
Yeah.
hands in other people's pockets as well.
Mm.
So it was just, but at the same time, they didn't want to lose the colonies, so they did send a lot of troops over. And easily just hold on to like kick out the Patriots of Boston, Boston was the place more than any, I think, the city where the Patriot cause was strongest, where you had the most people there who were pro independence. But even then, like 1775 was interesting because you still had the majority of colonists who were like, I don't know, man. I don't know if we want to break away from England because they do a lot of good for us.
Mm.
They do protect us but by 1776 that had shifted, and one of the main reasons is there's this guy named Thomas Paine who wrote a very easy to read and short pamphlet called Common Sense that was highly influential, one of the most influential pamphlets of all time, and it changes a lot of minds. And then you have people in governments of the colonies, especially in Virginia. Virginia then kind of leads the way, saying, "Yeah, like there's a political case for us to be a separate nation, and I think that all of us should join forces. All the colonies should join forces." And so,
Mm.
yeah, folks like Thomas Jefferson would lead that, and that's why he was also Thomas Jefferson was recognized as somebody who was really good at work with words. He was good at writing. And so when they started to meet these political leaders, they became known as the Continental Congress. So Continental Army, Continental Congress. The Continental Congress, they like, yeah, let's just do it. Let's just break away. And they had Thomas Jefferson and four other dudes write the Declaration of Independence. And that's to this day, the birthday of the United States is considered to be July 4th, 1776, because that's the day that the Declaration of Independence was shown to the world. Actually, it was July 3rd, but we don't need to get into that. But yeah, July 4th, 1776.
And Thomas Jefferson he's a big name in all of this. I think he's probably the most
Only
famous
after the
founding
Declaration.
father, maybe. Only after. Interesting.
Yeah, he's the household name after that. Yeah, because he's the
Who
primary
are the
author.
unsung founding fathers that we should know about but most people don't, at least in the UK probably? Because
Yeah,
I
I
would
mean,
say I know
John
Ben
Adams doesn't get
Franklin.
enough attention. Yeah,
I do know John Adams though. That's because of
yeah.
the TV show,
Oh
HBO show
yeah,
John Adams, which was pretty good,
nice.
I thought actually. Um, John Adams, he's a big one. Ben Franklin, he's a big one. Thomas
Yep.
Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton because of the play.
Yeah.
Um, who else? Who
Oh,
should I
John
know?
Hancock, because his giant signature. There's
Oh
just
yeah, okay. I do know him from the signature. Yeah, John Hancock.
I mean,
Okay,
Thomas Paine is always the one I bring up. I think he's underrated because
Thomas
he really
Paine.
did convince the normies that this is a good idea. Um,
He
you have,
radicalized the normies.
basically. Um, you do have like The thing is, like when I think of founding fathers, I think more about later on, the ones who actually wrote the Constitution or debated the
Mm.
Constitution, which that was a few years later. But the revolution itself, yeah, like I do give a lot of credit to Thomas Paine.
All
Yeah.
right, Thomas Paine. He's the guy. He's the unsung guy. So hang on. So 1776, the war begins. Is that right?
1775, but yeah,
1775 it begins. When is the Declaration of Independence? That's
1776.
cool. Okay. So the war
Yeah.
begins a little bit earlier, then they make the declaration, and then it really ramps up and conflict spreads to all the other states.
And it's important to recognize that this is a shift in just like the mentality. Like this is a philosophical battle now, not just like oh defending our home. Like
Massive shift.
and things
Massive.
aren't going that well either. Like George Washington's having a lot of defeats in 1776 into 1777. Most famously, Valley Forge is a outpost, like a military post that where there's a lot of suffering with the troops there. It's a very brutal winter. Many of the soldiers nearly starve to death. They don't have enough. They don't even have enough clothing to wear in the cold. But under Washington's leadership, they're able to survive. That's why this is where you start to see the legend of George Washington grow, especially also with the Battle of Trenton, which is there's this famous painting of him crossing the Delaware River to attack the Hessians in the Battle of Trenton to become more of a folk hero who you see it is a turning point, but not as much as Saratoga the next year because you have a decisive victory for the first time. But it's important to recognize that the first few battles did not go so well for the Patriots. The British were easily winning those first few battles.
So what's the size of his army?
I don't know the exact size. It's a few thousand. I mean, it's the British troops aren't dramatically bigger, but they have more things to more cannons. They
Yeah.
have better ships. Navy superiority is really important. Like that's a big reason why they're able to get around so quickly. And a lot of times it's just patriots are using guerrilla warfare. They're just trying to. A lot of them are trying to blend in society, even though they're secretly fighting for the.
That's the
Yeah,
idea that I have of it being
yeah.
small groups, people who've to go out to the forests and things and ambush people and things like that. Um, Interesting. Is there a point where it's sort of, well, okay, the French get involved? When does that happen?
So Saratoga is also significant because that's the battle because it being a victory. French. I'm just double checking here, make sure I got the yeah.
Nice.
That's the one where the because it was so decisive for the Americans, France was persuaded to enter the war to help them out.
Ah, so the French saw that the Americans had won a battle and they thought, we'll get involved.
Yeah, uh, they had been kind of thinking about it for a while anyway. Of course, you had Marquis de Lafayette, who's he was all about it from the very beginning. Like he hated the British.
He's a bit of a legend, right? Is that right? Would that be fair
Yeah,
to say?
like
Yeah.
he was the top French dude that
Yeah.
helped us in the revolution, and for many years afterwards, he was praised and paintings of him, and he even came back decades later, and people threw parades for him and everything. They didn't forget. Yeah.
Yeah. Had he been in the Americas before, or was this his first introduction?
I think it was his first. I don't remember. I think it was his first introduction. There's a good video about him on the channel, Drawn of History. So check that
Oh
out.
no, okay.
We're shouting out all different videos here for.
Yeah. No, yeah. Absolutely. So Lafayette turns up with. I mean, does he bring cannons and things like this with him
Yeah,
from the
weapons,
French? Yeah,
money. There was a
money.
big money issue for the Continental Army in particular. They were just creating their own money out of thin air, and so there was
Yeah.
hyperinflation. So
I mean,
that was
those
really
are they being paid, the early American soldiers? Or
not much. Yeah.
no, yeah.
So that's also once the French enter the war, they're able to like properly feed the soldiers, properly clothe them, and pay
Yeah.
for everything. Yeah.
And then the war gradually starts turning against the Brits. Is there a defining sort of turning point?
After Saratoga, the Battle of Yorktown is where
Yorktown. I've heard
Cornwallis
of Yorktown.
surrenders. Yeah, and
Yeah.
the treaty takes a couple years, but by 1781, it's pretty much it's looking like the Americans are going to have their own country, and it's
Yeah.
just a matter of. But I mean, it's not like. Well, we'll get into this a little later, but the British didn't fully leave North America. Like there were some outposts out west, for example, that they kind of hung around.
Yes. Um, Oregon. I think is that British for a while.
Yeah, parts of it.
Technically, anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, all of Canada. I
And all
mean,
of Canada, of course.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 Um, yeah. So the American Revolutionary War ends, and America is a nation. What are relations like with the rest of the world? How does that happen? Is Ben Franklin going out and doing diplomatic missions and things?
absolutely. 1780s. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's what it's about. Like, for starters, not a lot of other countries recognize the United States as a nation yet, so that's really
yeah. Well,
important to be
I
considered a
think
country.
people don't want to piss off the British. I think is partly.
Yeah,
Would that be fair to say?
there was that big dynamic in the early decades of the country was trying not to make either the British or French too upset, trying to
Yeah,
balance that because the British and French were still big enemies, and especially looking at trade and looking at how they navigated the Atlantic Ocean and Mediterranean Sea. Like you don't want to. So yeah, they were the world powers. You had a few other world powers, but nothing like. I mean, it was still French and Britain were kind of dominating, and so just kind of
yeah,
balancing that.
yeah.
Benjamin Franklin,
Cool.
though, yeah, excellent diplomat. He was one of the most important diplomat. He doesn't get enough credit as a diplomat. Everyone's like always like, oh, he was an inventor. He was a journalist. He was like just a witty dude. Okay, yeah, but I think he was good at talking with world leaders. That was really important.
He did everything. He was a real Renaissance man.
He really was.
Um,
So was Thomas Jefferson. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I don't know. Yeah, Ben Franklin intrigues me. I quite like Ben Franklin, because he was already an older guy at this point, whereas
Yeah.
Thomas Jefferson was quite a young guy. Right? Was Thomas Jefferson a slave owner?
Yes. He had
Maybe that's why I've been soured on Thomas Jefferson. I think because I've always known he was a slave owner, and I've always thought,
not only that, he had a slave mistress.
yeah,
Yeah, I made a whole video about him recently. We went to
mm,
Monticello, and yeah, his legacy is like pretty much summed up. He was ahead of his time in terms of his rhetoric and his words, like,
yeah,
but then his actions, complete hypocrite, but also just a
yeah.
horrible person as far as his
He was
actions.
a
Yeah,
champion of sort of white people's rights, I guess, but not anybody else.
white men. Yeah,
White men, yeah, of course,
yeah.
yeah, of course, only white men, yeah.
All right.
But this is the ancient Athenian idea of democracy, isn't it? It's just white men.
Yeah,
So that's
carried
I'm
over.
sure he was into that. Yeah. And he comes from the South,
Yeah, Virginia. The first,
Jefferson.
like
Mm,
many of the first leading politicians and presidents come from Virginia. More presidents from Virginia than any other state.
interesting. Um, right, we're going to have to move forward a little bit. Let's
Sure,
get to the War of 1812. Let's skip forward a little bit.
sure.
Is it true that the British just basically turned up and burned down the White House and then left? That's kind of my impression of the War of 1812.
Yeah, like,
I'm sure there's more to it than that, but that's kind of the impression I get.
well, you said impression. The one of the main causes of that war was the impressment of American sailors, and that's just a word that
Ah,
means like
how
the
interesting.
British
Yeah.
were kidnapping. I mean, there was this constant struggle at sea, but the British they had their own justifications for doing it. I don't want to get into, but
Mm,
long story short, British the British military, the Navy, was kidnapping American sailors and forcing them to join their navy. Um, and that was a big catalyst for why the United States decided to declare war on Britain again, and that became known as the War of 1812. There's other stuff going on too, like out west. I mentioned that earlier, kind of foreshadowing. You had the British were not completely abandoning their presence out there. They were giving a lot of aid and weapons to Native American groups that were resisting American settlement out west. When we say out west at this time in the early 1800s, we're talking west of the Appalachian Mountains, but east of the Mississippi River. So what today is
So
kind of like
West Virginia.
Ohio. Well, West Virginia didn't exist yet, but yeah, like Ohio, Ohio, Indiana, Michigan, Illinois, stuff like that. So
Got you.
uh,
Yeah, got you.
anyway,
Midwest.
yeah,
Now, anyway. Yeah.
and I mean, really, just Britain was kind of still bullying the United States in many ways. This kind of like, oh, you're just a joke country, you're not real.
Yeah.
And so it was more symbolic too, like a cultural shift, because this is the first time you see a rise of American nationalism. Before the War of 1812, all of the states still kind of view themselves first and foremost as states. Like if you're from Pennsylvania, I'm a Pennsylvanian. You know, I don't really care about those South Carolinians. So, but after that, the country starts to have more nationalism, becomes a little bit more federalized, and wasn't even a victory. War of 1812 was not even a victory for the Americans. It was pretty much a draw.
Yeah.
war. Oh,
Yeah.
you mentioned the whole burning of DC. I totally glossed that over. Yeah.
That's
So
um how can I put it? Yeah, I suppose that's the impression that I've got of it.
I mean, it's dramatic.
I mean,
Yeah, like
it's dramatic. Yeah.
the British could have easily defeated the United States, but they were also preoccupied with Napoleon. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
but
Yeah.
so thanks again to the French.
Yeah.
I mean, the United States would not exist without France. Like, I can't say it enough. But yeah, so in 1814, the summer of 1814, the British are just like, you know what, we've had enough. Well, let's just go ahead and be a little bit more offensive with this war and just end it. So they sent all these troops to. They're trying to take over Baltimore, probably the most strategic port along the eastern seaboard at the time, other than maybe New York. And on the way there, Washington D.C., the newly formed capital city, they just built it a few years prior, and they're so proud of it. But it's nearby, it's near Baltimore, and they're like, oh yeah, let's just stop by there and just destroy it. And that's what they did. Like the president was there, all the members of Congress were there. They all had to flee, and most of the significant buildings were destroyed, including the Capitol, including the White House. So it's one of those things that's like almost unbelievable to think about today, because the United States, throughout its history, has been extremely lucky. It's been rarely attacked.
Yeah.
So
It was quite a petty move by
you know,
by
it's
the
war.
Brits. But it's how war goes sometimes. But that strikes me as the moment where the Brits were like, okay, fine, you can have your own country.
Yeah.
Who was the president at that point?
James Madison, who was also the father of the Constitution. He had written the Constitution primarily a few years, and then that's he was good buddies with Thomas Jefferson, and he was his Secretary of State, and so that became a thing for a while, where the next president would be just whoever was Secretary of State before.
Oh, right. Interesting.
Yeah.
So by that point, 1814, we've already had a few different presidents then. So has John Adams already been president?
Yeah.
Ben Franklin was never president, was he?
No.
No. So it's George Washington, then it's John Adams. John Quincy Adams, has he come yet?
He
He's
comes
not quite
after
yet.
James
He comes
Monroe.
after.
He's the son of John
He's a little bit
Adams
further on.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened? What do I know about what happened then? I mean, this is the beginning of sort of the Mountain Men, Davy Crockett.
Yeah.
In my mind, anyway. It's
Well,
sort of
Daniel Boone
that's where
before
I go.
him. Yeah, Daniel Boone. I have a video about him. He was the one going back to the 1770s, like when the American
right.
Revolution's happening. He's like out west. And
He's
like,
going. He's gone.
He's west of the Appalachians, and
Yeah.
kind of has a mixed relationship with different Native American tribes. Some of them are enemies, some of them are friendly, but it opens the door because like he's the first one to build a road. And
Oh,
then
wow.
another big development over the next few years is like you have canals being built, including the Erie Canal, which connects the Great Lakes and the Great Lakes system to the Atlantic Ocean via New York City. So these developments are pretty huge. You have the National Road. So it's the first time the federal government is investing in and all just straight up funding and building national infrastructure, and that helps further growth. And so yeah, now Americans are less afraid to go west. The Oregon Trail, you mentioned the Mountain Men. That's further. That's even further. So before we even talk about them, we got to talk about the Louisiana Purchase. So
Which is around about 1814 sort of time. Is that round about
1803. So before the
1803?
War of
Okay, even
1812.
before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's interesting. It's Louisiana, I mentioned earlier, was owned by the French. Then the Spanish got it for a little while, but then the French got it back. But
yeah,
then Napoleon was like, we need money to fight the British. And so he turned around and, again, the French helped the United States out. And we got a bargain when I say
yeah.
yeah, so the France
No,
sold
big time, big time. Yeah, I'd say
yeah,
that's one of the biggest bargains in history.
absolutely. It's
Yeah.
insane to think about. Just a few cents per acre, and doubles the size of the United States. And that's where I live now is part of the Louisiana Territory. We're talking about, again, the entire watershed of the Mississippi River, the biggest river in North America, and it nearly stretches all the way to the Pacific Ocean, which gets a little fuzzy out there in Oregon Territory. But that's when people start to, yeah, Lewis and Clark go out. They're the first explorers. The Thomas Jefferson has the Lewis and Clark expedition to check out this area and report back, and then you have a series of I call them explorers, but some people call them mountain men who literally blazed trails. They created trails out west.
Yeah.
But a lot of these trails, I got to give shout out to the Native Americans who had already kind of created them before.
Definitely,
So,
definitely.
yeah,
It strikes me as the most successful of these explorers, these mountain men.
ooh,
They were the ones who worked with the natives, were the most
yeah.
successful ones, is what it seems to me.
Most of
Because
them are friendly. Yeah.
if you could be friendly, you could get a guide, you could get safe passage through the different lands. If you go through guns blazing, you're not going to have a good time. Because Lewis and Clark, they had guides.
Sacagawea, man. She's one
And
of
she
the
she
MVP.
she was more important than them. She was the boss of the expedition, really.
Yeah, well, they didn't meet up with her until present day Montana, but once they did, it was way better because I
She
think
got them through.
they maybe wouldn't have made it. Yeah, because
So
she's
hang on,
mostly like
they
a
began.
translator.
Sorry, they began in St. Louis, and they went
St.
through
Louis.
Montana.
So St. Louis, if you know, it's right along the Mississippi.
Yeah.
They call it the gateway to the West. Have you been there too?
I have been to St. Louis. Yeah, I
Oh,
went
so you
to
where did you
Cahokia
go?
last year. Literally just all over the US, but I went to St.
Wow.
Louis, and basically, yeah, Cahokia.
Yeah, Cahokia is
Cahokia.
awesome.
That was the reason I was in St. Louis. So I sort of flew in, flew out, basically. So didn't do much exploring in that area. But yeah, I was very aware that it was the gateway to the West.
You were 4 hours away from me. Yeah.
Oh, should
just
have
missed
got
it.
in touch. Yeah.
You should have drove out here 4 hours. Come on, man. No, but yeah, like that's the thing. The other thing I like to bring up is like the geography of this vast continent. For those of you who are not American, it's important to be aware of this because between the eastern seaboard and the Mississippi River, it was all forest, very fertile land, which most of it was chopped down and farmed. You go further west of the Mississippi, the forest starts to thin out to a point where you get to where I'm at now here in Kansas. There were hardly any trees. In fact, if I look out my window now, I see like all these trees were planted by humans. But it was still fairly good for farming. You go further west of here towards the mountains, then it's like, okay, you can try farming, but it may not work out. You may have a dust bowl later on, if you know what I'm saying. But yeah, like we become an agriculturally based society, and the whole part of the American dream is owning land and improving that land and making money off of it. That's the quickest way to build wealth for the vast majority of immigrants who come here, and that's what inspires so many people especially from Europe, to come
Yeah.
in the early 1800s. Yeah, and until the end of the century. That's yeah.
So this path is kind of it's the trail is blazed by these explorers, these mountain men. Lewis and Clark, the most famous for me that I've heard of. So hang on, what's the route they go? They go from St. Louis through the Dakotas
They
up
follow
to
mostly
Montana.
the Missouri River, which is the longest river in
Such a long way.
the United States. It's the Missouri River goes not too far from my house. Actually, it's like it goes through Kansas City, and then it goes up north. But they thought it went all the way to the Pacific Ocean, but it didn't. That was supposed to be this magical Northwest Passage that didn't exist. It does exist, but it's way up north.
Yeah.
And so they, after that didn't work out, they had a portage. They had to get out of the water, and it was a very difficult journey. But they eventually made it to the Columbia River in Oregon Territory, which led them to the Pacific Ocean. And this is what opened up. Like the thing about, I actually have driven the Oregon Trail before. We did it for a video. We drove
I've
it
seen
in-
that video.
Oh heck yeah! Look at
Yeah.
you. Thank you for
I
watching
like that
one.
video.
That one didn't get very many views, but yeah. So one of the most telling things about that journey from the beginning of the Oregon Trail, which is near present day Kansas City, and the end of it, which is near present day Portland, Oregon, apparently where there's a war now, by the way. The the most dramatic thing for me is like how dry and desolate the landscape is for most of it. Like you just don't. It's mostly desert. They call it the empty interior. So sure, you might have a waterfall on a lake in the mountain, but most of it is really hard because you don't have access to fresh water, and
Yeah.
it's really anyway. So you get to Oregon, and all of a sudden you get past the Cascade Mountains, past the rain shadow, and then you're dropping down into this lush, beautiful valley that must have seemed like paradise for people
Oh,
heading
yeah.
west. And so Oregon becomes this like also magical place. Like you just
Yeah.
got to go to Oregon, man.
Yeah.
Everybody that made it there, same thing. They got some of them got free land. That was the first Homestead Act where, I mean, the most fertile land in the world, and you get it for free. Talk
That's
about what
wild.
a way to build up wealth. Yeah.
So the Homestead Act, when does that come in?
Well, the first Homestead Act was that 1840s in Oregon, but the first federal one was 1860s. That was when Abraham
Okay.
Lincoln was president. Actually, in the middle of the Civil War, that was passed.
Yeah. Yeah. So, right, we're in the 1820s ish. We've got mountain men going through. We've got Leonardo DiCaprio being mauled by a bear.
It's a great movie.
That's happening round about this area. Montana, I think, is where does that take place? It's round about this place. That he's with one of these mountain companies, and they're
Yeah.
these fur trading companies that move in. Yeah, how many of these companies are there? Quite a few.
There's quite a few, yeah, because it's very profitable.
So they're basically these nutters, basically, who are going out and making a load of money, just braving the wilds. But in the process, they're sort of mapping the area, and they're sending stories back, so more people are coming out.
Exactly.
It's a really evocative time period, that.
Yeah, it's where you get a lot of the romanticism of the American West and this idea of manifest destiny that Americans are like, well, our ideals are superior, and so it makes sense that we should have our ideals across the entire continent, from sea to shining sea, is the saying.
Yes.
Yeah, and
Yes.
I mean, it was what inspired. So like you have the Oregon Trail, which is primarily pioneers moving to Oregon to settle. You also have the Santa Fe Trail, which is mostly a trading trail that leads down to Mexico, who had just become a country, just broke away from Spain. And and then you also have this other branch that some people start going off to this kind of limbo area called Texas, which becomes its own country for a while. But that's also part of this whole thing. Like, these opportunities to get cheap or free land to
Yeah.
really make a life for yourself.
Texas is part of Mexico, right? And then it becomes independent.
Yeah, it breaks away. There's a Texas Revolution where they break
Yeah.
away from Mexico, and it's its own country for about 10 years before the United States annexes it.
And that's the Alamo.
Oh, that yeah, the Texas Revolution is the
Mm,
Alamo. So yeah,
interesting, interesting. Yeah.
I don't know how much you want
Okay.
to go into that, but
We'll skip past that a little bit. We'll
yeah,
skip forward a little bit.
we're already approaching
Um,
2 hours here, aren't we?
yeah, yeah. We've got to move forward. We've got to move forward. But this is really the birth of the Wild West, as in my mind anyway. And that's maybe the most iconic American time period for the rest of the world. Everyone has been obsessed with westerns for a long time.
Mhm.
It was quite a grim period
In some ways,
in
yeah.
some
I mean,
ways. In some ways,
it's
was
another.
violence very widespread?
I wouldn't say it was more widespread than necessarily any other time or place in
Hmm.
history, but it definitely the. I mean, if you ask the cynical historian, he specializes in this. He says it's always overplayed, but it was real. There's
Yeah,
definitely an aspect
yeah,
of
yeah.
that.
But it's
Like
certainly, it's in the popular mind. The violence is the thing that defines it. I think the brutality of the period. But that's interesting. You're saying you don't think it was particularly much more violent than other places.
yeah, like the murder rate in say Tombstone, Arizona, which there's a whole movie about this one little town in the so-called Wild
Mm.
West.
Yes.
Wasn't that much dramatically different than a town back east, I would say. But there
Interesting.
are
Interesting.
these figures,
Yeah.
like Wild Bill Hickok and Billy the Kid, that they kind of make it they because yeah, they're crazy dudes who just like
Yeah. Yeah.
get into fights with people and kill them. Plus, there's this tradition of dueling that has been going on throughout early American history, where we
But
have
then the dueling happens in
all
Europe as well, all over the place.
yeah, that's carried over from Europe. Yeah,
Yeah. 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 Hmm. And I suppose at this point, it's definitely not just English people now. Now we've got Irish people, we've got Scots, we've got Welsh, we've got Scandinavians coming over, and people from all over the shop.
yeah. By the
Um,
1840s, especially the Irish have now, and they are immediately discriminated against and persecuted more than any other group, I would say. And during
yeah.
that time, and then until the Italians come,
And then the Italians
and
replace
then
the
they kind of
Irish.
become the
Yeah.
most yeah. And then there's just always the next group that comes over that oh they're not going to assimilate but it's crazy. I have a whole video about the history of immigration in the United States, and
Yeah.
it's kind of crazy how easy it was in the 1800s just to become a citizen of the United States. You basically just had to make it here. I mean, there wasn't any border wall or anything. There wasn't even yet Ellis Island. That didn't exist till the end of the 1800s. So it's just like, okay, you make it here, then you're in.
Did you have to declare yourself to a local official, or could you literally just turn up?
Local official usually, yes, but not
Yeah.
federal. Yeah.
So that's amazing. So you could just get on a boat, get to New York or Baltimore or somewhere, and then just keep going, and no one could stop you.
Yeah, and we haven't even mentioned the gold rushes yet. I mean, that was a big reason why many came out west.
The California gold rush is the one that sticks in my mind.
Yeah, 1848. You get a lot of Chinese Americans because of that as well. Uh, but this is before the railroad takes off, so you don't have. It's kind of crazy to think about if somebody wanted to be a 49er, be one of the gold rush prospectors, and you're
Mm.
coming from the East Coast. You had to take a ship all the way around the southern tip of South America, and we're talking at least a 6-month journey, if not longer. So
Man,
this is before the railroad.
yeah, it's such a long time before the Panama Canal as well.
Yeah.
Long, long time. Yeah, those poor Chinese people. They don't seem to have a nice time
Oof.
working on the railways.
One of
Because
the worst
China,
laws ever passed was the Chinese Exclusion Act, which explicitly uh, targeted Chinese Americans. Yeah.
because you mentioned that the Irish had the worst lot. The
Oh, that was just
Chinese,
1840s. Yeah.
yeah, the Chinese must have had a worse lot, or at least similar. Because yeah, they built a
But
lot of
they
the
were only
railways, right?
yeah, they were only in California
Mm,
mostly. Yeah.
yeah. Because China is, I mean, that's China's century of humiliation, is what it's known as, because it's just a bad, bad time.
That's why so many came to try to
Mm,
find a better
yeah,
life. Like,
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, try and find a better life, and
I
then
mean, Irish.
dying on a railway. Yeah, and the Irish, yeah, awful time. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Potato famine. There's more Irish people in America than there are in Ireland by a
Yeah.
considerable distance, actually. Yeah. So then, right, Texas becomes a nation, and then quite quickly absorbed into the US.
Yeah, because it's mostly settled by Americans, former Americans. Yeah.
And so voluntarily they join the US,
Mostly, yeah. There is some
mostly.
resistance,
Yeah,
but yeah.
yeah. I suppose parallel to all this, we've got the Mormons. They've Joseph Smith has started his new religion, and they've gone out to Utah and they've kind of carved out a load of land for themselves.
Yeah. So one
That's a
thing that's
wild story.
well, I mean, it's really one of many wild stories related to the religious movements that are uniquely American. I think it goes all the way back to the first Great Awakening of the early 1700s, but the second Great Awakening of the early 1800s is where you see groups like the Mormons pop up and other uniquely American religions, Protestant denominations.
Yeah,
But yeah, Joseph Smith's a fun one because he was basically like, uh, he's basically a con artist.
pretty much. Yeah, pretty
Swindled a bunch
much.
of people and started his own religion. And but yeah, they were persecuted, so they fled west and time again. They were in Ohio for a while, then they were in Illinois, Missouri, and then ultimately what's today Utah, which you know, thriving society that they ultimately were able to establish out there in the near the Great Salt Lake. But it's a uniquely American religion because they its own history is firmly tied to North America. Like they
Oh,
say, they
for
believe
sure.
that yeah, like
The
uh,
lost tribes of Israel made it to America, and
yeah,
also
you know about
Jesus,
that.
after he was crucified, walked amongst the Americans, made it to America.
Hmm.
And Joseph Smith actually began life really as a treasure hunter. So he would go out into the wilderness, and he was a mystic sort of guy, and he would claim to know where buried treasure was, and they would search for buried treasure. And then he claimed to have found these tablets, which only he could translate, and just so happened to be very similar to the Bible. Strange coincidence, that, isn't it? And he basically, yeah, wrote this new book, but
Yeah,
super popular. It's wild how popular it became.
yeah, the Book
Sort
of
of,
Mormon.
tens of thousands of people very quickly, very very quickly. And then that becomes a state, basically. When does Alaska come in? That's the late 1800s, right?
It well, it the United States actually purchases Alaska from Russia in the 1860s, right after the American Civil War, which
Yeah.
we haven't even got into all the
We
slavery.
haven't even
But
got into that, but I feel like,
yeah,
do most people already know about the American Civil War? I don't know, but
we can give the quick rundown.
we'll do the
Yeah.
quick rundown. We'll do the quick rundown. Um, what am I for? I mean, it's slavery versus anti-slavery. Is there more to it?
Well, yeah, like so as the country's founded, and then even when they create the Constitution, slavery is protected in the Constitution, like. But also for representation purposes, because we are a representative democracy, slave owners
Yeah,
realize that there's fewer of them, and they want to have their slaves counted as part of the population in those southern states, so they get more representation.
yeah,
But so that was actually part of the compromise that we call it the Three-Fifths Compromise of the Constitutional Convention. That's the only reason why southern states got on board. So from the very beginning of the country, we've had this clash, and the founding fathers knew that at some point they were going to have to deal with it.
yeah,
Um, the first big test was 1820. Was I mentioned Maine becoming a state earlier, so trying to keep the balance of slave states and free states, and that's when Missouri wanted to become a slave state. So they're like, "Well, crap, that will disrupt the balance." And so after that, they try to balance it out. They also had a line of latitude. If you're north of this line, then you're going to be a free state. If you're south of it, you're going to be a slave state. But even that, like, only held for so long. Jump ahead to the 1840s. I think it's an underrated decade in American history because you saw a lot of social changes during that decade. But also in England, by the way, like a lot of it was going back and forth, but just changes like, oh, uh, maybe people that have mental illness should get help. Maybe kids should go to school. You know, things like this.
Oh, that's
Reform.
too far.
And then last but not least, maybe slavery is like morally wrong. And
Yeah.
so you have the rise of the abolitionist movement. And the reason why it goes up a notch in 1850 is because of the Compromise of 1850. I always sing it.
Nice.
I've sung it since I taught eighth graders just to get their attention. But yeah, that law wasn't really that exciting, but it was the most important thing to know about the Compromise of 1850 was that it kind of escalated the tensions between northern states and southern states because, yeah, sure, it's trying to like kind of have this arbitrary balance, try to like keep it together because the country kept expanding out further and further west, and they wanted these western states to be free state or slave state. But also, their part of it was like the fugitive slave law, which said runaway slaves, northern states had to cooperate with federal authorities to return runaway slaves to the South. And northerners didn't like that so much. Abolitionists really didn't like that. And that really increased tensions. Plus, you got the Kansas Nebraska Act 4 years later, 1854, and that affects where I live here because that creates the territory of Kansas and Nebraska. But the most important part about that law was that it said that the people that live in these territories, they decide whether they're going to be a slave state or free state once they do join the Union. And because of that, you saw a flood of both abolitionists, New Englanders, free staters as they became to be known, moved to Kansas trying to make it a free state. And then in response, you saw a bunch of slave state people from Missouri come over to try to make Kansas a slave state. And at first, it was just like rigged elections. They're trying to write their own constitutions. But then people like John Brown come and violence escalates, and they call it Bleeding Kansas because people were murdered here in the name of making Kansas a free state or slave state. So it's almost like the Civil War has already started because violence is happening. On top of that, you've got like a member of Congress being beat nearly to death with a cane, a pro-slavery guy beating a anti-slavery senator, a pro-slavery congressman nearly beating a anti-slavery senator to death on the Senate floor. You have the Dred Scott decision, which is the Supreme Court chimes in. They're like, yeah, slaves aren't people. They're not human beings. So the Constitution doesn't apply to them. Holy freaking crap. And so we become...
It's pretty wild.
The only other time other than right now, I would say, that where the United States was more polarized and, you know, it was almost inevitable no matter who was in power, no matter who was president. But Fort Sumter happens in 1861. There's a federal fort on an island off the coast of South Carolina. And by that time, the Confederacy had formed. You had all these southern states that had seceded or left the Union, which means they're no longer part of the United States. They have started their own country called the Confederate States of America. So just like the United States broke away from Britain, they think they're doing the same thing. They think they can do that. And it's all on the issue of slavery. They want to keep slavery as an institution. But regardless, Abraham Lincoln's down president. He's not giving up federal control. He wants to keep the Union together no matter what. He's not bringing the federal troops home from Fort Sumter. So the Confederate government sends troops to attack Fort Sumter to retake it over. That's the official beginning of the American Civil War, the bloodiest war in American history. 650,000 Americans end up dying in those 4.5 years.
It's a lot of people in terms of relatively to the population as well. That's absolutely gigantic. And something I found out recently is that it really was in almost all of the states. There was even a war that was fought in sort of the Arizona area, New Mexico, Arizona area, which is really interesting. Yeah.
Before that, there was the Mexican-American War. We should mention that was how we got like Southwest United States. We just kind of James Polk was president, kind of just invaded Mexico. He said it was a border dispute, but and then that was kind of a war of aggression, in my opinion. And
Yeah,
so
I
the
would
United
agree.
States takes over the northern half of Mexico with the
Yeah,
Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo.
which brought quite a lot of Spanish Americans really under the US,
Yep.
many of whom still live there today.
Yep.
Many of whom probably people would assume that they are maybe Mexican immigrants or whatever, but really they've been there for hundreds of years.
Yeah. Some of them have ancestors that go back further than
Yeah,
most Americans. Yeah.
yeah, it's an interesting one. Um, 650,000 people. It's a lot of people. A lot of people.
Yeah.
The aftermath of the war is, in some ways, you can still feel it now, right? Because I mean, it's people in the south maybe feel enmities to the north because of the effect of the war. Maybe that's what it seems like to me. What do you think to that?
I would say, yeah, like even to this day, culturally, there's a difference between those that live in southern states. Although that's been changing over the last few decades as more and more people in the northern part of the country move to the what we call the Sun Belt, the southern states that where there's a little bit better climate in the winter.
Yeah. Then there are cities like Atlanta and places where things are changing, I think, as well. And it's maybe
Yeah,
less
absolutely.
sort of conservative and yeah, than it used to be. Yeah,
But I
interesting.
mean, it's like the racism that didn't go away.
Yeah,
uh, in many ways, we're still dealing with that. People don't like to admit it, but it's. I mean, you don't just end slavery and expect society to progress. Especially when the way you end slavery is you have to kill a lot of people to do it.
yeah.
I mean,
If
in
you're
your country,
forced to do it,
they didn't have to do that, for example. So, um, it's
but
part of a healing process. Yeah.
we didn't have plantations
Yeah.
in the country. The
Yeah.
plantations were in places like Jamaica, which were quite far away.
Yeah.
So I think it was easier.
Absolutely. Yeah.
It was further away. So we get into the late 1860s. Abraham Lincoln is assassinated.
It's the very end of the war. Yeah.
Very end of the war, and then his replacement is a Southerner.
Yeah. From Tennessee, Andrew Johnson, one of the worst presidents in American history. So you go from
Yeah, I've
like
not heard
the
good things.
best to one of the worst. Yeah.
Yeah, I've not heard good things. Um, so, but America starts getting very rich at this point in the late 1800s.
Yeah.
So
So a couple big
the Gilded
movements.
Age, is that
Gilded
this
Age.
period?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you have Reconstruction first. Like that's the period we usually associate with like how are we going to become whole again as a nation after the Civil War. You have radical Republicans who want Reconstruction to be all about full civil rights for all African Americans, not just the right to vote, but they should have equal protection. And that's how they do get the 14th Amendment passed, which it's really important that they do that. That was in 1869, 1868, I believe. So that's a big development. You have the federal government is just hanging out in the South, making sure that the racist Southerners aren't discriminating against African Americans. It's still happening. There's laws that discriminate against them, like saying you can't go to certain parts of town after a certain time, for example. But people don't realize that it was actually better for most African Americans in the 1870s than it was, say, the early 1900s.
Is that
And
because
that's
of the Jim
because,
Crow laws?
yeah, Jim Crow laws came a little bit later because after the election of 1876, it was, I would say, the closest to presidential election in American history. It was so close that people were freaking out that there might be a second civil war. And so they had a compromise reached. And one of the parts of the compromise was the federal troops who would go back north and then kind of let the southern governments kind of return to how they wanted to be free of federal influence. And yeah, the Jim Crow laws were put into place, and then just you saw African Americans serving in the Senate and in the House of Representatives in Congress in the 1870s. By the 1880s, they're all gone because now you
Mm,
have voter suppression, you have complete racial segregation,
mm.
and just like this is where they're officially treated like second-class citizens. And so while that's going on, like you have actually the rise of, as you were mentioned earlier, the Gilded Age. So the second industrial revolution is happening everywhere in the world, but it's really happening in the United States. So you have the inventions of the railroad, the telegraph. You have essentially now huge factories that can mass produce things, but also you can transport these things around the world a lot easier. And so there's a lot of money being made in industrial cities like Chicago and Cleveland and Pittsburgh, New York, and most of them are in the North. And so that's why many African Americans flee the South for the first time. This is why you have African American populations in bigger numbers in the North. To this day, goes back to what we call the Great Migration, that at the turn of the century, 1900s, is, they were not many opportunities for them in the South anymore, especially once Jim Crow laws went into effect. And so many of them moved to northern cities.
To places like Chicago and Detroit and places
Oh,
like that.
yeah. You mentioned Detroit, of course, the home of the automobile. That was where the car became a thing.
So that's Henry Ford.
Yeah, he wasn't the first, but he was the one. The reason why Henry Ford gets a lot of attention is he was the one who came up with his version of the assembly line that was really efficient, that really was able to produce more cars for a cheaper price for the average consumer.
Mm.
Also, he had other innovations that helped his company become very successful. But he's a big reason why cars became affordable to like the middle class. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Massive anti-Semite, I think.
Oh yeah. Yes, he
There's
was.
always something.
Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So yeah, we've gone forward a lot of decades there, which is
Yeah,
good because
Gilded
we've got
Age
to
is.
at some
There's
point
also
get to the end.
happening progressive movements during this whole
Mm.
time because the concentration of wealth is out of whack. You have just a few rich people that kind of control everything. Sounds really
As
familiar.
always
Okay.
happens. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I say we're
Um,
living in the second Gilded Age right now.
Funny that you mentioned, yeah, because this is the time that sort of Trump's grandfather, doesn't he start a hotel like at this time? And that's where the Trump wealth comes from.
Probably. I don't know much
I'm
about
sure
his
I read.
grandfather. I know more about his
Um,
dad, but
yeah, because his dad was the mogul New York
yeah.
guy, but I think his grandfather, it was sort of this time.
But you think about like the Andrew Carnegie
Mm,
or John Rockefeller, who
yeah,
is who by some measures may have been the richest man to ever live, or at least in modern history. It's kind of crazy how wealthy these, and you could have
you,
been like Andrew Carnegie, who donated all your money, or you could have been like Rockefeller, who didn't.
yeah. Keep all your money. Yeah, keep it in the
I
family.
mean, he donated a lot, but he
Yes.
did keep a lot of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, what I find interesting about this period is that there's still kind of like a Wild West going on as well in some parts, because
Hmm.
there's still a load of people arriving from Europe to go out into, build a homestead in the middle of nowhere. That's still going on at the same time as all this industrial activity up in the north, and then the end of the Civil War in the south, because places like Arizona is not a state yet. It's just
Oklahoma, not a
Oklahoma.
state. Oh,
They're
that's the last area.
territories.
It used to be called Indian Territory because that was where they had placed all the Native American tribes. They didn't know where else to put them, so they just put them
Yeah,
there. And
one of the
then,
last treaties to be broken, right?
right, and then they break
Yeah.
that treaty and said, actually, we're going to take over this land too. And
There's
that
a
was
horrible story of the name
1890.
escapes me, but there's a group of Native Americans. They began in New York, then they were displaced to Ohio, then they were sent somewhere else, then they ended up in Oklahoma, and it's just series of lies and treaties being broken and being moved
Wow.
around and around and around. Just terrible. Yeah. And then we get to the early 1900s. So we're getting towards the end, Mr. Beat. We're getting towards the end. What
Yeah.
else can we talk about? What else can we talk about? What else will be interesting that people haven't heard of at this
I mean, a
time?
lot of this stuff this time is very rhyming with what's going on in American history
Mm.
today, also British history. I mean, you have
Yes.
Second Industrial
Yes.
Revolution. I think we're actually getting ready. Artificial intelligence is kind of putting us with this new kind of technological upheaval. But whenever you have a technological upheaval, you have like a few people that make a lot of money, but
Mm.
then you have a lot of people that are kind of exploited, and then
Yes.
eventually the people will rise up and there you don't want a violent revolution, obviously, but
No.
you, probably a revolution of some sort's going to happen. And so what happened in the United States was at first the populist movement. A lot of farmers in the Plains states teamed up with factory workers in the
Mm.
cities, and after that took off, then it led to a more mainstream progressive movement, which the big ideas from this time period, early 1900s, presidents like Theodore Roosevelt and Woodrow Wilson, they had these ideas like, oh, yeah, workers should be protected. They should only work so many hours a week. Let's make it 40. If you work more than 40 hours a week, then it's overtime. Kids shouldn't be working in factories, they should be in school. Uh, Consumer protection. So you should have you shouldn't buy something from the store, come home and eat it, and then you just die because there should be labels and certain things like consequences for these companies that have dangerous products.
Yeah.
Prohibition is the thing. That, of course, that's a failed experiment, but that's stuff like that where people justified the government stepping in to help ordinary people to varying degrees, basically. And that kind of, by the time World War One happens, that's where that kind of peaks around that time.
And
You've
then
heard
we
of World
have
War One, haven't you? The Great War. You've heard of it?
yeah, just about, just about. And then we have the Great Depression, which is, you
It's all
know,
great.
it's all
Yeah,
great. It's all great. Yeah. Well, you mentioned the Dust Bowl earlier briefly.
I did. Yeah,
Yeah, because it must have affected your area
a little bit. Yeah,
a
there's
little
stories
bit,
like my
a little bit.
grandpa, when he was a little kid. One of his earliest memories is being in, and then we're in eastern Kansas, so this isn't even,
Mm.
but just seeing dust storms coming all the way from western Kansas. So,
What's the history of the Beat family? Do
uh,
you
we
know?
I know a little bit because we did a
Mm.
genealogy thing with Genie
Mm.
Vlogger. Shout out to Genie Vlogger. But
Oh, nice.
a lot of my ancestors are from uh, either Russia or Germany or British
Mm.
Isles. And as far as like, I have one branch that can be traced back to the 1600s with the British side. Um,
Oh, wow.
so that's pretty neat. Yeah, but yeah, same as many Americans' ancestry. Like if you're out here in Kansas, probably you had some ancestors who were further east and they just kept
Mm.
moving west.
Yeah.
And even a lot of people that once lived in Ohio, before that they lived in, you know, New Jersey or something.
Yes. The Russian is interesting though. I wonder when the Russians came in.
Yeah, it was the Volgas, that region of
Ah.
that
Oh, wow.
which I had no idea until he dug
Oh, wow.
in. It was
So
pretty,
is this a DNA test sort of thing, or
yeah.
yeah,
And
yeah.
then he
So you
filled
don't
in
know the
yeah.
individuals.
Not many of them,
Yeah.
but a handful, yeah.
Interesting.
So,
Interesting. Yeah. How close are we to another civil war?
oh, right now,
Hmm.
I would say we're closer than I'd like us to be, but I think it's the thing is it wouldn't look like a traditional war, I don't think. When I say traditional war, I mean like the wars of the previous 100 years.
Hmm.
Like we mentioned the American Civil War, like one big reason why 650,000 people died in that was because the technology had changed. They were still used to the old way of fighting, but by then you had guns that could more accurately kill people. You didn't even have to be that good
Hmm.
at shooting.
Yeah.
Whereas now, now no, it doesn't matter. It's so easy to get a gun here that I feel
Hmm.
like it would not be. I feel like it would be kind of similar to the Troubles. I actually told Philip DeFranco this recently. Like that's how a civil war would look like. You'd have pockets of violence, maybe like cities, but overall, like you would not see it like day to day.
Yeah, but it would be bad. It would be bad. The
Yeah,
troubles
all war is bad.
troubles were not
Yeah,
a good time. Yeah.
no.
Um. Yeah, it's a strange name, the troubles. Yeah, my dad's actually from Northern Ireland, so he knows all about it.
Oh,
He lived all
ooh,
through it. Yeah, but
holy crap!
it's the troubles. It sort of takes something away from it. It was ethnic violence, thousands and thousands of people. Yeah. So yeah, I hope the US doesn't devolve into that.
Well, we it's media that's driving it, media
Mm,
consumption. So that media consumption habits have to change, and that's what's so unique about
yeah.
it because you didn't have this in previous eras of history. Yeah.
Yeah. The media. There's this division that's going on because of the internet. Uh, yeah, scary times. Scary times. I'm hopeful for the future, but I'm pessimistically hopeful.
I think most historians are hopeful because we zoom
Mm,
out far enough. Like,
yeah.
I somebody in the comment just said the second Gilded Age is now. Like, yeah, we've lived through the Gilded Age. We're doing it
Mm,
again. But what
yeah.
came out of the Gilded Age was a lot of good stuff for your average ordinary person. So I
Mm,
think just getting through it sucks. But I think if you think
yeah.
long term, I think we can make it through.
I think we'll be okay in the end. I think the humans will triumph. I think the robots will be defeated. There may be a great human robot war at some point, but the humans will win.
I mean, I think you're
Um,
right, actually.
I think
We
we've
can
we've
have a
we've
joke about it.
yeah, we've pretty much we've done the history of the United States there. We've got up to the
The 20th century.
1930s. Yeah, I think that's fine. I think the
Yeah, because
20th century is
you
fine.
know more recent history pretty well. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think well, a lot of people have lived through it.
yeah.
Um,
I
yeah.
basically there's a post World War II society that we're still technically kind of living in. I think that
Mm,
there's really two eras after World War II. I think that the same could probably be said for much European countries as well. Like you have this first period of there was neoliberalism, but it was also very strong social safety net paid for by very high taxes. And then since Reagan Thatcher 80s, this reaction to neoliberalism that or not to neoliberalism, but to high regulations, high taxes. Neoliberalism still here has been like, okay, we need to shrink the size of government. Now, what we're seeing is actually a backlash against neoliberalism itself and a backlash against internationalism itself. So, internationalism and neoliberalism, the two kind of pillars going back even back to World War One with Woodrow Wilson and the League of Nations and all of that. I think it's kind of crazy to think that that's been like the status quo for over 100 years now. That's kind of now, and that's why it's also scary to live through because that could lead us towards fascism. It already kind of is in some ways, some parts of the world.
yeah. Certainly, times are a changing. Um, because yeah,
Bob
in some
Dylan.
ways, history doesn't exactly repeat itself, but it certainly rhymes. Um, I don't know
Okay, Mark
what
Twain.
what can we do? What can we do? What can we do? I suppose all we can do is just continue
Teach
talking about it.
history. Yeah,
Yeah,
I think that's like I do think this is a very important time for history teachers to put themselves out there. Like I've
mm,
recently started to like speak with uh, non-history tubers. We call ourselves history tubers, I guess. I don't know. I do, but like talking to people that don't do what we do, and even if that means political pundits, which I talk a lot of trash about political pundits because a lot of them are just like outrage farming and all this. But
mm,
if that's how we reach people, because I think the lessons need to be heard now on a lot of things. Like I just released a video, and I of course I specialize in American political history. That's what I mainly just talked about with you. But like I just released a short video the other day. I was like, okay, did you know that Hitler was elected? Like I'm
it's
not
true.
saying that
Yeah, it's
Hitler's
true. He
coming
was.
back.
He
I'm not
was.
saying I'm not saying the United States is Nazi Germany. That's not what I'm saying at all. But I'm
Yeah, yeah,
saying
yeah.
there are certain parallels to watch out for. You don't want to go down that path. Maybe we're kind of already on that path, whether we're like want to admit it or not. So stuff like that.
It's important to remember as well that Germany isn't some exceptional place that's different to
Yeah,
everywhere else. It was just
yeah,
certain economic things happened, certain international things happened that led to that situation, and that situation can happen anywhere, and has happened in other places too. Spain, Italy, Argentina, many places have had a similar sort of situation happen, and it can happen anywhere. Yeah, it's important to remember. Important to remember. I'm hopeful. I'm hopeful for you guys. I'm rooting for you.
Well, how
And
about your country? What are you?
oh, we've
What do
got
you
our
think's going to
problems
be?
here. Got
Yeah,
our
like,
problems here.
do you think that Brexit will be reversed in
Oh
the
no,
near future?
no, 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 no. Brexit will not be reversed. We're all sick of. We're finally sick of talking about Brexit now. We spent the last 10 years talking about it. Um, I think most people have realised that it was a terrible idea.
Yeah,
Um,
but
maybe it was good. The best you could probably say is I didn't want it ever, but the people who were for it, maybe they would say it was good in principle, but in practice, it has been a disaster.
yeah, no, I mean that's the thing I say about the protectionists here in the United States, like both whether it be Bernie Sanders or JD Vance, like you actually in principle I get what you're saying, but in
Mm,
practice I
yeah.
don't. It's just not going to work like you think it's going to work.
There's often this
Yeah,
disconnect between, sure, something
yeah,
sounds good on paper, but I mean, look at basically all communist countries. It looks good on paper. What actually it ends up doing is not that.
yeah.
Uh, yeah. But yeah, here we are. Here we are,
It just means though
2025.
that we have to make changes. I think we have to just accept the fact that dramatic changes need to be made, especially with artificial intelligence. Just super artificial intelligence is
Yeah,
just around the corner.
there's a big change coming for sure. A big change coming. Yeah, I'm gonna have a quick look at the comments. Is anybody saying anything
Thanks for
interesting? I
being here,
did
everybody.
just thank you everyone. Sorry, I'm terrible at responding to comments while I talk. I'm just
I
really
was kind
bad
of
at it. I'm really bad at it. Someone says great South Park explanation of Mormonism. Yeah, that's fair. Um, what else have we got? Somebody mentioned the Donner Party really briefly, and
Oh
that is
yeah,
actually, we should have talked about the Donner Party because that is super interesting. We didn't really go into much about the westward expansion too much and the wagon trains, but the Donner Party is one that sticks in my mind. They all sort of ate each other. A bit grim. Was that normal? That wasn't normal at all, was it? That was
no,
very unusual one, I
and it's
think.
just to show the hardships of being
Mm,
a pioneer on those trails. There was a group of people that got trapped on in a high altitude mountain pass in the winter, and no help was going to rescue them.
no.
So yeah, they survived by eating each other.
Those
But
landscapes that you've got are no joke.
they didn't eat family members at least. So
Mm. I think they weren't killing each other to eat each other. They
no,
were
they had already.
just
Yeah,
eating bodies, basically. Yeah.
was that
Needs
normal?
must. Oh, that's normal. Yeah, normal.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, cool. That's probably. I'm going to go and eat some dinner now. What time is it for you? It's like
That's
lunchtime.
right. Yeah, yeah, it is lunchtime, a little bit
Yeah.
past, but yeah, I enjoyed doing this, Pete. Thanks for having me on, and
Yeah.
this is
Well,
cool.
thanks for
Yeah,
coming. This has been great. It's been lovely talking to you. Um,
likewise.
I look forward to watching your videos for many years to come.
Well, I appreciate your interest in what we're doing here across the pond.
Yeah. And I hope that we can continue doing this and we won't get replaced by AI avatars.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no kidding.
Fingers crossed.
Fingers crossed.
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.
I'm